Kang Song-ho is a survivor, a man who knows that in a world where the game's survival life bleeds into reality, the only rule is to kill or be erased. The apocalypse isn't a metaphor, it's a series of systemic notifications, portals opening in quiet forests, and monsters that tear through the fragile peace of the modern world. Once a casual gamer, Song-ho now keeps his secrets buried in a makeshift shelter, balancing his life as a humble chef with the brutal necessity of hunting creatures for their loot. But the game is ending, and the servers are shutting down, leaving the awakened humans who gained powers through the game to face a reality that is far more lethal than any digital code. With the line between the virtual and the physical dissolving, Song-ho realizes he is no longer just a player. He is a target in a game rigged by an unseen mastermind. He prepares to tear the hierarchy apart, even if it means becoming the very monster he once farmed for points. It all begins with a single desperate choice made months ago. An assistant notifies President Jang Won-taek that the national address is about to begin. The protagonist notices the time and realizes that the end of survival life is rapidly approaching. He waits in the shadows, clenching his fist as he prepares to face the consequences of the impending system integration. President Jang Won-taek appears on screen to address the nation, asking for the full attention of every citizen. Across the city, people scramble to turn on their televisions because the president's broadcast is mandatory. President Jang Won-taek announces that martial law is in effect, as the army has seized control of all national infrastructure. While subordinates fret over the opposition party's reaction, President Jang Won-taek dismisses their concerns to focus on the catastrophe ahead. He exhales deeply and admits that he declared martial law to give the nation a dignified end. He reveals that the scenario from the game's survival life is now reality, triggered by the falling asteroid Yunjembe. The US military failed to intercept the asteroid, which has already crashed into the sea near Okinawa. The impact caused catastrophic damage, and the resulting zombie spores are now turning the population of Japan into monsters. President Jang Won-taek warns that the apocalypse will reach the country of 1717, Timin 1, making it impossible to avoid. He explains that certain individuals, known as the Awakened, may possess immunity to the virus. As the broadcast continues, the president details the impending shutdown of thermal power plants and the distribution of emergency supplies, justifying his drastic measures before offering a final farewell to the nation, specifically thanking the anonymous informant who provided the precise date of this D-Day. Watching the screen from the shadows of a dim room, the protagonist turns to his pet wolf, Dingo, and acknowledges that the long-feared apocalypse has finally arrived. With a calm intensity, he warns his companion to remain still to avoid injury, then grips a hammer and prepares to face the chaos, drawing on his experience before stepping out into the world with Dingo at his side. The memory of a ruined city flickers into focus, where months earlier he, Paik, and Rabid Gongju prepared for a high-stakes combat bet. Rabid Gongju mocks the pair for their reliance on brute force, while the protagonist retards that they lack any true skill without their flashy moves, prompting her to grant them a 1-minute head start. He recognizes the survival life VR simulation where zombies and fantasy monsters collide, and as the trio charges, they shout for a shield bearer to stop the monster. When the timer hits 0, he presses the detonator and accepts the offer to land the final blow, cursing the game as a miserable experience after his defeat. The bitter aftermath of that defeat leaves the survivors lingering in the ruins, bored and frustrated by the lack of remaining challenges. Song-ho stands among the defeated, feeling the weight of an orderly apocalypse that is transformed into a stagnant, empty labyrinth. They debate the inevitable server shutdown, desperate for any shred of stimulation to break the monotony. A mysterious figure agrees with the grim assessment, while Song-ho silently craves the intense dopamine hit of a genuine, high-stakes event. Suddenly, a notification sparks a flicker of interest as a user named Newbie is Numum appears in the chat. The veterans immediately shift their focus, preparing to hunt the newcomer and savor the sight of fresh meat in their dying world. The character in the strawberry outfit announces that only 5 players remain, urging everyone to stay silent and focus on the target. Song-ho receives a guide from his companions, who promise to reconnect with him once the tutorial concludes. 2 hours later, the group panics as they realize they are still in the tutorial, asking if this is really just the beginning. Frustrated by the developer's refusal to lower the impossible difficulty, the remaining players log off. The virtual world feels increasingly hopeless, driving them to abandon the digital space for good. The last survivor bids Song-ho goodnight before disconnecting. He remains behind, caught in a moment of sharp shock and uncertainty as his allies drift away into the void. Tension hangs heavy in the air as they depart, leaving him to watch his friends vanish into the real world. He clings to the fading hope of their return. Even as he senses the journey reaching its inevitable end, Song-ho remains entirely alone, streaming his endless battles against zombies just to maintain his grip on sanity. He fights day and night, hoping his persistent presence might draw his friends back to the game. Months pass, and though the developers finally update the tutorial to be easier, introducing grotesque mutated creatures in the process, his friends show no interest. He becomes the sole player left in the entire world. Exhausted and hopeless, Seon-ho decides to quit, only to receive a final notification. Survival Life will terminate service in 1 week. He wonders if the system was simply waiting for him to finally give up. A creature unleashes energy, forcing him to hide behind debris as it stalks the remaining crowd. Overwhelmed by the futility of his struggle, he finally quits the game, deletes his streaming accounts and tucks his hard drives into a closet to bury his virtual life. 3 months pass, and he now works as a chef, serving regulars who call him the burnout chef as he settles into the rhythms of reality. He runs his snack shop from the ground floor of his home, finding a grim comfort in the routine. Mi-kyung, a local hairdresser and regular, drops by to praise his latest dish, completely unaware of the gathering storm beyond their quiet street. She laughs while showing him an online rumor that shouting "status window" triggers a hidden system, but he dismisses it as nothing more than gullible fantasy. Curiosity wins out and he shouts the command, startled by the sudden blue window manifesting in the air. The system confirms a main quest completion and unveils a trait for an open private portal, forcing him to accept that his reality has become the very game he tried to escape. Staring at the blue rift manifesting from his hand, Song-ho struggles to comprehend the sudden interface. He recognizes the gate from Survival Life, yet he cannot reconcile the system with reality, especially since no public records of the asteroid Yunjumbai exist. A quick search on his phone yields a news article confirming the asteroid's trajectory, turning his lingering denial into cold panic. Though he prays the connection is merely coincidental, the encroaching game system confirms that the apocalypse is no longer a theoretical threat. Sung-ho resolves to enter the portal to find concrete proof, though he pauses, paralyzed by the danger of stepping into the unknown without a strategy. Probing the edge with a ladle, he finds only dirt and wonders if the portal is just a warp to somewhere on Earth. After gathering his gear, he steels his resolve and steps through the threshold, emerging into the heart of a sunny, expansive forest. The air turns biting and his phone loses all signal, forcing him to mark the trees to maintain his bearings while he scans the wilderness for clues. Exhausted by the endless forest, he asks why it is so big, only to see a creature stalking the underbrush. A sudden energy tears through the dense canopy, forcing Song-ho to scramble back just as a white valley deer steps into view. A system window flares to life before his eyes, confirming he is no longer on Earth, while a mysterious voice begins to explain the reason for his sudden arrival. He narrowly sidesteps a lunge, realizing the creature lacks true malice, though he remains on high alert since this specific beast never appeared in the original Survival Life. Gripping his knife, he finally accepts the undeniable link between this realm and the game, steeling himself against the looming catastrophe destined to consume humanity. With his golden eyes fixed on the tree, he eats a sun apple, hoping it will help him survive. The fruit surges through him, restoring his stamina with the same mechanical efficiency as a premium cash shop item, a realization compounded by the sight of fresh goblin droppings nearby. He acknowledges the end is inevitable, hardening his resolve to ensure his arrogant enemies suffer the consequences of the chaos to come. Upon returning through the portal, he reviews his archived gameplay footage, horrified to find his own recordings being repurposed as tools against the human race. Calculations confirm that only 32 days remain until the asteroid impact triggers the Iron Death, a systemic mechanic destined to reduce all metal to useless dust. This blight will inevitably force civilization back into the Stone Age for an entire year, yet Sang-kan-ho refuses to yield to the coming darkness. Believing his unique private portal trait can bypass the effects of the Iron Death, he drains his savings to hoard essential gear, preparing for the apocalypse. He spends his remaining days monitoring online forums where the public's casual skepticism regarding rumors of awakened individuals feels like a slow-motion car crash against the rapidly approaching deadline. Returning from his morning errands, he meets an associate who gestures for him to step inside to discuss the grim state of the world. The transaction is brief. He secures a 60-pound hunting bow, nodding in gratitude to the seller before disappearing with the weapon and a heavy sense of anticipation. Doubts flicker in his mind about whether he is overreacting, but he steels himself, fully prepared to endure years of struggle if it means surviving the inevitable collapse. Outside, his eyes lock onto the person he has been seeking, though he flinches in surprise when a woman suddenly calls out to him. She asks if he is closing up shop for good, but he deflects her concern, dismissively claiming the building is simply too old to maintain. Though he attempts to brush past her to attend to his urgent business, she lingers, hesitant and bashful as she fumbles for words. He cuts the interaction short and walks away, keeping his internal calculations to himself, since every second is now tethered to his survival. With a flick of his wrist, he invokes his power and blue magical energy flares around him as he tears open a portal to prepare for the bloodshed ahead. As a strategist, he acknowledges that he lacks the raw physical prowess of true veterans, forcing him to lean entirely on his meticulous battle plans. He knows that in Sura, stats are earned through the results of the hunt rather than leveling up, a mechanic he must master. The bow feels surprisingly natural in his grip, and he focuses on his aim, refining his draw to ensure he remains lethal in the coming skirmishes. Concentration sharpens his vision as the archer steadies his breathing, waiting for the perfect moment to release the string. He stares at his own reflection in the challenge, realizing he must reconcile his past self with the harsh reality he is about to step into. The arrow flies with a sudden burst of energy, surprising him with the raw power of his own newfound talent. He declares his intent to kill, bidding farewell to his lingering doubts while resolving to begin intensive strength training as he can currently draw the string only 5 times. With these basic preparations complete, he sets 2 clear objectives: testing his combat ability against local monsters and establishing a secure hideout for his supplies. While waiting for his equipment, he slashes through foliage and harvests golden fruits, comparing the task to taking over a nest. A marked tree catches his eye, and he tracks the woods until he finds scattered goblin droppings, confirming the presence of monsters. Because these creatures typically hunt in packs, he deduces that a single pile suggests an outcast, and he becomes determined to hunt it down to test his strength. He knows that real combat is rare, and as night falls, the sound of howling wolves signals that he is nearing the valley. Peering toward a pool, he spots a low-tier goblin and recalls how these creatures use poison darts and spears to torment their prey. Opting to engage from a distance, he steadies his aim and calms his breathing upon noticing the target is an elderly exiled creature lacking its usual weapons. He releases an arrow that strikes the creature, and although he misses the head, he decides to press his advantage with a follow-up shot. A sudden red attack forces him to block, realizing too late that the wounded goblin is a seasoned veteran who will not go down easily. He parries the vicious swipe, his blade glowing as he braces for a decisive counterstrike. Energy flares upon impact, but the goblin retaliates with a jagged red blade, forcing Song Ho to respond with desperate fury. The struggle turns frantic until the monster grapples him, pinning his weight heavily against the forest floor. With a sharp thrust, he drives his blade through the creature's throat, ending the fight before scrambling to his feet. As the goblin draws its final breath, a notification confirms he has successfully earned 2 survival points. He finds a pouch and discovers that mixing guaca powder with vegetable oil creates an ointment, so he starts digging for more. Swiftly, he drags the carcass away to bury it, knowing that leaving the remains behind will cause it to mutate into a lethal bone creeper. While cleaning his gear at a nearby stream, the sight of red-scaled trout sends a chill down his spine as he realizes he has wandered into an owlbear's hunting ground. Twin red eyes fixate on him from the deepening darkness, forcing him to crouch in the brush as the gravity of his danger sets in. He shifts his focus to his stream, greeting his audience as Kimbabjala, though some viewers grow impatient with his dry survival lessons. Insisting that he put hours of effort into his monster guide, he acknowledges a generous donation from a user named Bullsangman. He offers his thanks for the support even as the donor jokes about the grueling labor required to afford the contribution. Ignoring the petty squabbling in the chat, he returns to his lecture on the specific dangers of goblins and the threat of the bone creeper. He warns his viewers that the most hazardous beasts in this forest are werewolves and owlbears, monsters he recognizes all too well from past trials. Explaining that an owlbear's presence confirms a balanced monster ecosystem, he finds himself momentarily reminiscing about those past struggles as better days. He prepares to explain the strategy, but stops, realizing the fight is real and his life is at stake. He stares in disbelief as the apex predator looms over him, the grim realization settling in that he is watching his own life flash before his eyes. Refusing to accept such an end, he interprets these sudden flashes as a final push from his old friends, urging him to regain his composure and continue the fight. Forcing his mind to remain sharp, he recalls that an owlbear only feasts when hungry, and the beast currently stands perfectly still. The creature is agitated solely because he has breached its territory, specifically the prime hunting ground where the red trout gather. Acting with desperate speed, he dashes toward the monster to exploit the opening in its defense. He knows his body is just Kang Song Ho, but he must act if he wants to survive. He knows that while the beast boasts superior night vision, it remains hypersensitive to light, so he prepares to execute a familiar attack pattern just as a red energy claw descends. He lunges forward, shouting to shine the light directly into the creature's eyes. He leaps away as the beast erupts in a roar of agony, using the momentary distraction to channel a burst of energy for his escape. Waking up later to the shrill sound of his alarm, he finds his body racked with the lingering exhaustion of his narrow flight. The memory of that terror remains vivid, leaving him with the firm resolve that he never wants to face such a nightmare again. A sudden wave of lightheadedness strikes as he realizes he has not eaten since the previous day, causing his legs to buckle beneath him. He reaches into his bag for a sun apple, and as he consumes the fruit, a system window flashes to confirm his stamina has been restored. Feeling the vitality return to his limbs, he stands up, determined to find a more substantial meal. Song-ho finds his thoughts drifting to Mi-kyung, who lingers at his table, leaving him to wonder why she has chosen this moment to keep him company. She offers a soft smile, noting this is a favorite spot of hers, yet Song-ho remains guarded, questioning the true intent behind her sudden presence. When he tests the waters by asking if she has attempted to call up a status window, her confirmation leaves him stunned into silence. The pieces finally click into place, explaining her earlier hesitation as she gestures toward a recent news report regarding an inexplicable string of cash thefts. He masks his own secret, claiming he tried the command but saw nothing, knowing full well that his solo play trait is far too dangerous to reveal to anyone. In this looming apocalypse, he understands that showing his hand would be no different than signaling monsters to come and claim his life. Pressing her for the truth about her own awakening, he watches as she apologizes, finally confessing that she had been hiding her own secrets as well. He offers a reassuring nod, telling her there is no rush and that she can share the rest when she feels the time is right, as they still have a window before the end. After parting ways, he heads home to find his long-awaited supplies arriving, offering a brief word of thanks to the delivery worker before securing the packages. Inside, he methodically organizes his gear, piling up a gas mask, a heavy fire axe, and canisters of gasoline as he prepares to carve out a defensible hideout. Stepping through his portal, he returns to the wilderness, intent on securing a base within the cave he had scouted while tracking the lone goblin. He crouches low in the thick foliage to study the cave entrance, but he freezes in place, his breath hitching at the sight of fresh tracks in the dirt. The realization hits him that these are the footprints of kobolds, a dangerous discovery, yet he checks the wind, already calculating how to turn this stroke of luck to his advantage. Because these creatures are nocturnal, the cave's daylight-drenched entrance acts as a lethal barrier. Song-ho works frantically to stack dry wood near the opening, dousing the pile in gasoline to guarantee a volatile trap. With his lighter poised, he whispers a cold promise to eradicate the nest, marking these monsters as his first true prey. Inside the den, the kobolds stir, their senses sluggish and disoriented as they stumble toward the sudden intrusion. Surprised by the sudden assault, the pack recoils, only to be met with Song-ho's mocking, forced politeness. He swings his axe to clear a path, striking the monster with a blue energy blade. Though he feels a wave of fatigue that might be a status effect, he knows he can secure a one-turn kill to finally hit level 1. Igniting the gasoline, he exploits the fact that these low-tier monsters possess a crippling weakness to sudden, intense phenomena. While direct fire would work, he prefers to smoke them out, sparing his future hideout from the gore of a messy slaughter. He sows chaos among the pack, forcing them to scramble out of the cave where he waits to finish them in one fell swoop. As only 3 kobolds manage to crawl into the light, he strikes the first one down with a swift, decisive blow. He parries their attacks with his blade to slice through their defenses. Amidst the final scramble, he spots the gemstone he requires, finishing off the survivors with a mix of axe strikes and chemical spray. With the last leader cowering at his feet, he declares the den his own before ending the struggle for good. He catches his breath as the adrenaline fades, feeling the familiar weight of exhaustion debuff his stats exactly as it did in the game. Realizing that leveling up unlocks essential system conveniences, he pulls up the shop interface to maximize his spoils. The cave now stands as a secure, private sanctuary, and he steps forward to claim the space as his own. A grimace crosses his face at the sight of the debris, though he grins at the potential of his new base once it is cleared. Cleaning begins immediately, and he grumbles under his breath about the filth the kobolds left behind. His portal ability proves invaluable for hauling away the trash, though the sheer volume of manual labor leaves him physically drained. Testing the limits of his system, he discovers he can anchor coordinates between dimensions, allowing him to interact with objects even while they straddle Earth and the other world. After a thorough spray down of the cave, he surveys the damp walls and decides that mortar and sandwich panels are essential to complete his construction. His eyes widen as he spots rare lumen and ignis stones embedded in the rock, turning his hideout into a gold mine. He excitedly plans to mine the crystals once the structural work is finished. The next day arrives with the D29 countdown looming, and he wakes up with muscles aching from the previous day's labor, only to notice a strange, pulsing scar on his arm. He inspects the strange marks, deciding they are minor enough to ignore without wasting a precious sun apple. To treat the irritation, he gathers guaca powder and vegetable oil to craft a simple healing salve. Mixing the two components in a precise 1-to-1 ratio, he stirs the paste until it sets into a firm, effective ointment. As the salve soothes his skin, a wave of fatigue washes over him, leaving him to question if he can sustain this relentless pace before the end. Memories of a gas-masked survivor surface, reinforcing his need to keep grinding his stats if he hopes to endure the coming chaos. He weighs the benefits of switching to a sling or firearm, but a sudden, sharper realization about the mechanics of the game interrupts his thoughts. Considering whether the backstory of Sola might manifest in the real world, he decides to hold on to that information as a potential contingency. A search through his belongings reveals an electronic device that confirms his darkest suspicions regarding a looming precursor phenomenon. With his plan solidified, he ascends to the rooftop to find the mortar supplies waiting for his fortification project. He heads back down to the first floor to retrieve his packages, only to be stopped by a familiar, cheerful voice. Mi-kyung notes her frequent visits for tteokbokki, prompting him to offer a quick apology for his recent preoccupation with the shop's renovations. When she notices he is due for a trim and offers to cut his hair, he agrees, realizing a shorter style will be far more practical for his upcoming treks. Inside the salon, he asks her to shave it all off, explaining that he wants a completely fresh start. As she shears his hair, he mentions his new exercise regimen, and they trade theories about the growing rumors that the Awakened are simply former players of the game. She casually mentions that the Awakened are just former players, leaving him stunned as he wonders how she uncovered such a niche secret. The salon bell chimes, signaling the arrival of Oh In-hak, who rolls up his sleeves to reveal a tattooed arm while he begins to speak. Sung-ho instantly recognizes the newcomer as the man behind Mi-kyung's rumors, listening as the group gossips about a streamer who deleted his footage and vanished. Irritated by her hesitation, In-hak insists his pursuit of the user known as Kung Sung-ho is a necessary service for the public good. Tucked away in his seat, Sung-ho realizes he is the target of their investigation, while In-hak continues to pressure Mi-kyung to join his cause. He recalls scrubbing his own channel to prevent others from monopolizing his strategies, all while In-hak mocks Mi-kyung by comparing her to the legendary Seolo. Growling with impatience, In-hak licks his lips and looms over her, demanding she commit to his team without further delay. Caught between the threat of online harassment and In-hak's aggression, Mi-kyung wavers while being pushed to reveal what she knows about the streamer. Sung-ho steps forward and asks to talk later, warning In-hak to leave while he is still being polite. A chilling, predatory aura radiates from him, forcing sweat to bead on In-hak's brow until the man decides it is wiser to retreat. Once the store is quiet again, Sung-ho cautions Mi-kyung about the man's dangerous nature and insists they exchange numbers for safety. Returning to his room, he logs onto his computer only to find a digital mob baying for his blood, threatening to hunt down his physical address. Disgust washes over him as he shuts down the monitor, turning his back on the vitriol of his fellow humans while keeping his own resolve unshaken. He sits in the dark and summons a blue orb, focusing his energy for the coming apocalypse. For 2 days, he buries himself in the labor of fortifying his hideout, mining luminous and emission stones to vent his tension before spreading mortar across the floor to secure his future. Stepping outside to let the mixture set, he gazes up at the moon and resolves to fight injustice with his own brand of ruthlessness, deciding he has no use for a hero's burden. As he turns back to his refuge, convinced that survival is his only true objective, a bone creeper lunges from the shadows. A skeleton with red eyes approaches and he curses as an explosion erupts. With 27 days remaining until the world ends, he lies motionless on the ground, knocked unconscious by the force of the blast. His hand twitches as consciousness flickers back, his senses dulled and his mind reeling in shock as he tries to process the sudden catastrophe. He struggles to recall the creature's arrival, vowing to drag his opponent down while wondering how he managed to cling to life through the detonation. Realizing the skeleton was already primed to explode when he first spotted it, he understands he only survived because he barely managed to put enough distance between them. With metal spikes still embedded in his flesh, he fights to sharpen his focus and pulls up his status window. He notes his level has reached 2 with 19 points, and though his physical stats have plummeted, he feels a surge of relief that nothing is fractured despite the severe toll on his body. He clutches his head in pain, struggling as his brain fails to process the strain. He attempts to summon a portal for escape, and a sudden, sharp blue flare erupts from the system in response to his desperate command. Gritting his teeth against the agony, he performs emergency self-treatment, digging through his own flesh to extract the jagged bone fragments. After smearing the healing ointment over his shoulder and wrapping it tight, he drifts into an involuntary faint, losing consciousness before he can assess his survival. Waking in the quiet, he realizes with a jolt that he never verified his first aid success. Gripped by the terror that his wounds might be festering, he checks his status window to confirm his stats have adjusted to this weakened state, though he remains deeply puzzled by the sudden, inexplicable appearance of the bone creeper. Scanning the vast, suffocating expanse of the forest, he weighs the benefit of dumping points into perception to better detect future threats while sipping from his tumbler to regain strength. Memories of the game surface, reminding him that stats only increase through combat experience or by equipping rare items with specific bonuses. Because the system is notoriously hardcore, he knows that obtaining such gear requires the impossible task of defeating monsters far stronger than himself or completing high-stakes events. Frustration mounts when he acquires the wildness skill, a useless trait that fails to suit his needs, though he knows high-ranking monsters can drop better abilities under specific conditions. Desperate for an edge, he pivots to the game's hidden lore, frantically connecting his hard drive to scour the files for any overlooked clues. He realizes that if the game's precursor phenomena manifest in reality, he could potentially secure powerful items before the apocalypse fully descends. Hours of research yield 3 distinct precursors, but while he identifies the Russian ship as the final event, information regarding the preceding hobgoblin remains infuriatingly scarce. He shifts his focus to the Mount Jerry Orc incident, identifying it as the likely first precursor phenomenon, and calculates his departure for the 25th to ensure he finds the target alive. Just as he prepares to mobilize, a late-night call from Mi Kyung forces him to pause his preparations. She arrives at his shop, noting his intense expression and the heavy gear he wears, though he deflects her concern by claiming he rarely feels the heat. While she denies that Owen Hawk caused her any trouble, he admits his deep disdain for the man, especially regarding his history of harassing the elderly. The tension shifts when she confesses to being an awakened. He chooses to play along, though he remains inwardly guarded against her true intentions. Once she departs, a sudden system notification confirms his growth, granting him the title One Who Overcomes the Adversity of Fate, pushing him to level 20 and bestowing the legendary Cloak of the Void. He wastes no time, purchasing a drone and renting a vehicle to facilitate his hunt, then forces himself to sleep to ensure his body remains at its peak. He works at his bench to forge gear, hammering the stones to prepare for the coming battle. He glances at the crafting bench, aware that smiles in this world often mask hidden agendas, but his status window offers the only truth he can rely on. Methodically, he blends Ignis stone powder with resin to create volatile explosives, establishing a secure workstation at the portal coordinates just before the system fully integrates with reality. These mounting uncertainties weigh on him, yet he finds a measure of relief in his decision to rent a high-quality vehicle, streamlining the logistics of his desperate survival plan. After loading his gear and makeshift bombs, he drives toward Mount Jiri, opting to rest in the car until he reaches the border where the predicted orc is set to emerge. The air grows heavy with an unnatural shift as the countdown slips away, signaling that the event trigger will strike before the clock hits midnight. He arrives at Jongsan-ri under a downpour, frantically reviewing old combat footage and double-checking his equipment as the boundary between reality and the game begins to blur. 2 hours of combing through the dark, misty woods yield nothing but frustration, as the relentless rain and thick fog obscure the trail of his target. Despite his unwavering focus, a gnawing doubt settles in. These real-world precursor phenomena are deviating sharply from the patterns he memorized. A thud echoes in the rain, and he flinches as a hulking silhouette emerges from the mist. It is an orc, a rare red subspecies, and he steadies his grip, wondering if killing this beast will finally grant him the rare skill drop he needs. He pauses, forcing his heart rate to steady, as he realizes that panic is a death sentence in the mist. Steeling his resolve, he readies his portal skill, intending to manipulate the spatial battlefield to his advantage. A flare erupts in his hand, its harsh light cutting through the downpour to bait the monster's predatory instincts. As the monster swings its blade, he times his movement to entrap it within the rift. The orc slams him into the portal, but he uses the impact to slide through the rain and avoid the blow. He throws the flash can, and as it pops, the beast screams in pain. With the target reeling, he keeps his eyes locked on the system timer, mentally marking 20 seconds to end the encounter. He stabs the orc's muscle to sever tendons and hold the creature in place. A massive sweeping axe arc whistles past his ear, narrowly missing his head as he ducks beneath the lethal swing. He lunges forward in the darkness, his blade finding a precise opening in the creature's defenses as it bellows in frustration. Rising to match the monster's height, he plants a volatile explosive charge directly onto its chest. After spotting two witnesses watching from the shadows, he jams a lit flame can into the orc's gaping maw to finalize the kill. The beast detonates from within, the violent shockwave throwing him backward until he slams hard against the wet earth. He lies in the rain, cursing himself for letting his guard down. Dazed and battered by the blast, he finds himself cornered in the downpour, fearing his end as the fiery, looming threat of the dying orc presses down on him. He huddles by a flickering fire, his frustration mounting until his watch abruptly transforms, surging with a pulse that boosts his perception and helps him scan the rain-swept forest. Scanning the unconscious man he just defeated, he recalls how the government hushed up this Manjiri incident to stave off a nationwide panic. The weight of Mi Kyung's warnings settles in. He realizes thousands have likely awakened, and many of them could prove just as dangerous as the thugs from the Sea Party. Nearby, he watches a blonde man pull up a hood, a chilling reminder that predators will inevitably exploit this chaos to incite riots for personal gain. His immediate problem remains the limp body at his feet, knowing that if left to rot, the man will inevitably transform into a bone creeper by tomorrow. He realizes he might become a zombie, but decides he will make his opponent pay. Torn by indecision, he finally opens a portal, driven by the grim conviction that for the few who actually survive, the world deserves an orderly end. He labors in the thick mud with a shovel, his wounded foot throbbing with every movement as he laments the miserable, grueling reality of his struggle to stay alive. A sudden notification triggers his survival instinct skill. The rush of adrenaline boosts his waning stats and forces his body to push through the exhaustion. Digging with frantic intensity, he finishes the task just as the temporary power peaks, diving headlong into the portal before his remaining strength fades away. Adrenaline surges through his veins as he forces his battered body to move, shouting a frantic plea that dies in the cold, rain-slicked air. He checks the time, wondering if he is already falling behind schedule. Without his magical abilities, he knows he would be lost, yet he berates himself for failing to complete the defensive line construction in time. A quick check of his phone reveals no major news from Mount Jariri, confirming that the abnormal weather has successfully scrubbed all traces of the red orc. He steps inside and forces a calm facade, moving toward the wooden cabinet to retrieve his specialized equipment. An Indian war club lies inside, and he feels a grim satisfaction knowing he can wield otherworld armaments even within the constraints of reality. A sudden prickling sensation of being watched makes him pause. He scans the room, realizing with a start that several of his items have vanished. Finding a customs notice explaining his spear was seized, he instructs the delivery driver to leave his latest package at the threshold. The sound of a lock clicking at the door catches his ear, and he assumes the courier is still waiting, only to be struck by pure shock when he pulls the door open. Mi Kyung stands on the other side, offering a shy apology and admitting she simply wanted to speak with him again. She fidgets with a bag of groceries, inviting herself inside to ask if they can share some rabulki. Embarrassment washes over him, quickly eclipsed by a deep sense of unease as he wonders if this unannounced visit masks a hidden agenda. She urges him to eat, and although he complies, he remains hyper-vigilant, questioning her true intentions while they sit together in the quiet room. He eases into a conversation about Seola, though he can't help but sarcastically remark that romance has no place in a world teetering on the brink of an apocalypse. Despite his cynicism, he decides to assist her, convinced that preserving some semblance of humanity is essential for the chaos to come. A flicker of dark amusement crosses his face as he tells her to finish her chores, promising they will depart together once she returns. Left in the quiet of his room, he fires up his laptop to anonymously disseminate survival tips, carefully scrubbing his digital footprint to remain an unknown entity. He types out warnings that large groups of 6 or more only serve as beacons for monsters, stressing that individual perception stats will be the deciding factor between life and death. Together, they pore over his notes, confirming that in this twisted game-like reality, survival is the only objective that matters. As he digs deeper into the data, she mentions that the online community is already turning on Kimball Lover, accusing the player of selfishly hoarding critical intel. When she asks for his take, she admits that while the mechanics of this world remain a mystery to her, she understands that everyone has their own desperate reasons for their choices. He confesses to rejecting an alliance with Inhak, making it clear that he refuses to throw his lot in with such a bottom-feeding thug. To prove his point, he plays back a recording of Inhak's men plotting to abduct her, exposing the depths of their malice. His expression sours with contempt as he promises to keep her safe, disgusted by how quickly people shed their morality once the law dissolves. He warns her to trust absolutely no one, but she catches him completely off guard by suggesting they form a party together. Stunned, he freezes, paralyzed by the gravity of her request and the lethal danger she would be inviting into her life. His current goal is to hit level 10 and unlock the shop, but he knows the system scales monster difficulty, meaning her presence would likely be a death sentence. She insists on staying, and as he laughs, a digital light erupts before them. To prove her resolve, Mi-kyung reveals her blink trait, arguing that their survival depends on this alliance rather than succumbing to the infection. She offers this secret as a pledge of loyalty, hoping they can support one another despite the risks, and vows to help secure the necessary funds for their preparation. After she departs, Sang-ho shifts his focus to the hideout, hammering in heavy support posts and reinforcing the perimeter with barbed wire to fortify his base. He installs infrared sensors across the entrance, wondering if the grueling manual labor is finally pushing his dexterity stat higher now that the defensive line is complete. While planning the internal panel layout, a violent, sudden sneeze interrupts his work, serving as a harsh reminder of the physical toll his efforts are taking. The otherworld air feels as sharp as late autumn, prompting him to scrap the makeshift curtain in favor of building a solid, sturdy door to withstand the freezing nights. With a list of critical errands in mind, he maps out the locations he must loot before the Iron Death disease takes hold, detailing his planned hardware and pharmacy runs. During his rounds, he crosses paths with the gym director, Oh Hyung-jun, and catches the weary, troubled expression on his face as the world teeters on the brink of collapse. They briefly discuss their physical conditioning, with Hyung-jun admitting his exhaustion stems from recent labor, and they confirm they have both heard the unsettling rumors about status windows and the impending zombie outbreak. Hyung-jun finally accepts the gravity of the rumors, though he admits he has yet to manifest any special abilities of his own. He mentions an acquaintance currently meeting a producer to monetize the unfolding chaos, leaving Sang-ho to ponder the absurdity of such misplaced priorities. Dismissing the notion of raising public awareness, Sang-ho notes that the violent shootout in Yeouido is a far more pressing concern. When Hyung-jun reacts with shock to the news, Sang-ho realizes his companion missed the reports and directs him toward the online petition board. Sang-ho checks his status window, seeing the new titles he earned from his victories. They scroll through a petition demanding transparency regarding Yeouido, a post Sang-ho personally watched get scrubbed from the internet in real time. They discuss the government cover-up, which labeled the incident as a military deserters disturbance. As Hyung-jun begins to speak about the military blockade, Sang-ho abruptly cuts the conversation short and departs to focus on his own preparations. Back in his shop, Sang-ho analyzes the perfectly coordinated media blackout, realizing the authorities must have possessed early knowledge of the game's mechanics. He reviews his private files, recalling how he destroyed the Red Orc's remains to ensure secrecy, yet wonders how others identified the exact timing of that first precursor. Assuming this mysterious party lacks the strength for direct combat, he resolves to hunt down whoever is pulling the strings from the shadows. Behind this manipulation, unseen figures within the government maintain their grip on power from the shadows. A hooded figure looms over a suited man, who prepares to unleash his own latent abilities in a desperate bid for survival. Sang-ho narrows his search for the mastermind to the creator of Survival Life, only to dismiss the theory since he already confirmed the developer's death. Clutching a broken red chess piece, he realizes the game's integration points toward 3 veteran players as the true architects of this catastrophe. He doubts the government holds the reins, knowing they would have moved to stop his orc hunt, and laments his inability to shield those he cares about. Fixating on the future, he suspects the player known as Survivor 1 might be the culprit and begins mapping out his investigation. He weighs the possibility of withholding secrets from the authorities, though the lingering uncertainty leaves him feeling trapped and frustrated, questioning whether the Survivor 1 from his past is truly the same person now. He warns that the Academy is a place where one must be prepared to die. He misses his old comrades but decides to trust his allies, knowing information cannot stop the end. 2 days pass, and he finishes stockpiling his food, resolved to remain within his sanctuary until the moment for the apocalypse arrives. Reflecting on his father's memory while inspecting the shelter, he plans the next phase of reinforcement by installing steel logistics trays. He realizes the space is tighter than expected after guiding the installation, prompting a mysterious figure in a suit to turn and walk away. Although the basement waterproofing is complete, the storage remains inaccessible until the material sets, so he turns his focus to eliminating the target standing right in front of him. With the target neutralized, Sang-ho turns his attention to his virtual equipment, knowing he must navigate the cursed dungeon that remains uncleared, and begins to explain the harsh reality to his companion as they move. He taps a remote device to secure his position, feeling a surge of accomplishment as he successfully designates his shelter as the central hub for all future exploration, telling his companion to rest. He launches a drone to scout the perimeter, revealing endless snowfields to the northwest and a vast ocean to the south. Overwhelmed by the sheer scale of a landscape, his companion begs to be accepted as his disciple. While the ocean offers a bounty of potential prey, Senhal's focus shifts closer to home, where he discovers the owlbear corpse has vanished, leaving him to wonder if a larger, more predatory creature has scavenged the remains. He examines the area to find scattered skeleton remains and fresh goblin tracks, concluding that his immediate vicinity is far more dangerous than he anticipated and vowing to make the culprits pay for their intrusion. To safeguard his equipment, he triggers the drone's return flight, his eyes narrowing with a cold determination to face his enemies head-on. He then turns his attention to his maps, marking the presence of boars and deer in the nearby swamp zone. Ready to gather more intelligence, he readies his gear to investigate the swamp's farming viability, but the sudden, sharp chime of his phone alerts him to a movement signal on his infrared detector. The infrared detector alerts him to a small band of goblins encroaching on his position, and Sung-ho watches them with a sneer, unimpressed by their lack of manners. He tracks the set of bare footprints through the undergrowth, estimating that a small group of 6 to 8 targets is currently closing in. Since their path leads directly toward his hideout, he draws his weapon and prepares to intercept the hunting party. The forest sounds feel unnaturally sharp to his heightened senses, forcing him to wonder if his increased perception stat is the cause of this clarity. Though memories of past debates about showing mercy flicker in his mind, he pushes the sentiment aside to focus entirely on the skirmish at hand. He moves with practiced silence, tracking the targets through the dense trees, while keeping his own presence carefully concealed. Deep in the woods, the goblins stop their advance, squabbling greedily over a rabbit they have managed to trap. Sung-ho finds the perfect ambush angle from behind a thick trunk and readies his bow, steadying his breath. A single precise shot rings out, the arrow piercing one goblin's skull to initiate the assault. The remaining pack swarms toward him in a frantic frenzy, turning the quiet forest clearing into a chaotic battlefield. He fights back with ruthless efficiency, his blade flashing as he slashes through the screaming, aggressive monsters. Cutting down another creature, he relies on his tactical training to stay steps ahead of their wild, uncoordinated lunges. He lunges forward, driving his blade into the goblin's throat to stop its screeching. With 4 targets already dead, a sudden shift in the air alerts him to a lingering threat, and he stands his ground, remaining on high guard. He turns to confront the remaining attackers, mocking their lack of etiquette as he weaves through their clumsy strikes. Sung-ho steels his resolve, bracing himself for the final, bloody phase of the skirmish. He abruptly switches to melee, realizing his poison darts are useless against these resilient foes, and hesitates for a heartbeat before committing to the slaughter. He lunges to scatter the goblins, gripping the red orb and declaring, "For me." With a ground-shattering strike, he clears the immediate area, brushing off his survival as mere luck while reflecting that this forest is truly a living hell. As the monsters writhe in agony from his lingering status effects, he draws his blade with cold precision to end their suffering. He slices through the remaining creatures, a surge of power signaling his rise to level 4 with 16 new points, and pauses for a moment to catch his breath. Acknowledging that the goblin's disorientation was the only reason he emerged victorious, he readies his gear to face whatever fresh threats await in this tutorial labyrinth. With D21 left until the world falls, he begins digging into the earth, frowning in confusion as his survival instinct skill triggers despite the mundane nature of his manual labor. He manifests magical clones to accelerate the process, marveling at their efficiency and realizing the skill possesses hidden potential beyond simple combat. After confirming the physical recoil remains manageable, he buries the last of the corpses and turns his attention to inspecting the spoils of war. Inside the discarded packs, he discovers a guava fruit perfect for health restoration, though he wonders if he can locate a steady supply of vegetable oil nearby to maintain his momentum. He opens a final, heavy pouch to find a live blue toad. Puzzled as to why the goblins would keep such a specimen captive instead of killing it, noticing the creature's pungent, musty scent and the viscous green liquid coating its skin, he realizes this toad is the biological source of the goblin's paralysis poison. He grabs his helmet to secure the beast, knowing its toxin is vital for his survival. He carefully injects a small amount of the extracted toxin to build his resistance, knowing that coating his weapons in this paralysis agent will make future hunts significantly easier. Naming his new companion Jodok, he watches as the frog drifts into a deep sleep, his empathy skill triggering automatically to bind the creature as his loyal property. Though he wonders if this pet mechanic is a hidden gimmick added to his reality, his focus shifts to the unsettling notification that the game's service terminates in 1 week, leaving him baffled by such a pointless update before the final shutdown. Setting that mystery aside, he activates a dimensional gate to scout the area, eventually stumbling upon a hidden spring near the hideout that his drone had failed to detect. Testing the water, he feels a wave of relief to find it clean and drinkable, which solves his hydration crisis and allows him to avoid the dangerous swamp while also harvesting valuable vegetable oil buds nearby. After gathering his supplies, he deploys a protective barrier into the woods as a security measure, carefully marking his path to ensure a safe return before heading back to base. The following morning, he drops a grasshopper into the enclosure, watching with satisfaction as Jodok snatches the insect with a lightning-fast tongue. He decides to house the toad on the second floor, meticulously adjusting the environment to maintain a temperature between 18 and 25 degrees to ensure the creature's survival. Beyond caring for his new companion, Sunha remains buried under a mountain of urgent preparations, spending long, grueling hours conducting experiments within the safety of his hideout. Amidst his frantic experimentation, he realizes he has produced a surplus of healing ointment. He decides that gifting the access to Hyungjun is the most practical way to dispose of the stock. Upon arriving at the gym, he hands over a protein drink to his younger associate, who accepts it with genuine appreciation. Hyungjun looks over the generous donation of supplements and salve, clearly taken aback by the sheer volume of goods. Dismissing the other man's playful accusation of involvement in a pyramid scheme, he insists he is far too pragmatic for such nonsense. Their conversation shifts to the recent shooting, with him admitting that his prior knowledge of the event was the only reason he avoided being caught in the crossfire. Noticing the unusual silence in the gym, he learns that the majority of the members have already migrated to establish a communal base. He reels at the news that 20 people are grouping together, knowing all too well that such a large gathering acts as a beacon for monsters. Hyungjun stands firm, arguing that they cannot simply abandon their peers to face the coming threat alone. Praising his loyalty, the gym director offers him a spot in their group, assuming they are both still among the unawakened. A piercing scream cuts through the air, sending both men rushing toward the window to investigate the commotion. They reach the scene to find Mikyung collapsed on the pavement, her body marred by fresh injuries. She slowly regains consciousness, her eyes darting around in a daze as she struggles to process her surroundings. Hearing her story, he protects her and glares at the man. What a fucking bastard. Before he can react, a sudden command rings out for him to remain with the veteran, leaving him paralyzed by the abrupt shift in circumstances. He orders an immediate area sweep, then anxiously asks Mikyung if she can identify the assailants. When she explains that her vision simply went dark, he realizes his enemies have already begun their move. He warns her to use her blink ability the moment she feels threatened again, promising to send over defensive equipment to keep her safe. The weight of the coming apocalypse presses down on him, forcing him to tread carefully as the deadline approaches. He remembers the infamous gaming meme that in any gathering of 5, one is inevitably trash. Trollers were everywhere, but in the world of Sura, they thrived without fear of developer patches or consequences. Knowing the authorities will never act on his report, he prepares for the reality that these predators lure parties into monster-infested traps to wipe them out. They approach unsuspecting newbies with fake kindness, hiding lethal weapons behind their backs until the perfect moment to strike. These killers murder targets for loot and manipulate parties into fighting one another, laughing at the chaos they incite. The player count once plummeted because the remaining veterans had to severely discipline these trolls, punishing them for ruining the experience. He realizes now is the perfect time for such predators to run rampant, especially since communities have integrated in the wake of the Uedo shootout. While the digital landscape grows increasingly toxic, he discovers a user named Doa J. Yusim on the leaderboard, brazenly selling edited footage that falsely claims he carried them during their earliest days. The sheer malice required to splice such bait leaves him in disbelief, forcing him to wonder what kind of twisted mind would manufacture such a lie. To counter these schemers, he resolves to escalate his training, feeling a surge of raw energy as he maps out his next move. He notes that online strategies ignore the Iron Death to focus only on monsters. Adaptation is his only path, so he smiles, choosing to prioritize a versatile weapon capable of both monster extermination and neutralizing human threats. Sorting through his limited arsenal, he tests a slingshot and clay beads, but ultimately finds the selection lacking for his specific needs. He experiments with a wooden slingshot, firing a test beam of energy that confirms the tool holds surprising potential. The clay beads prove too fragile for his requirements, prompting him to pivot toward the Indian War Club as a more reliable alternative. Because the Iron Death will soon render metal obsolete, he plans to secure an ebony wood club from the level 10 shop to crush zombie skulls effectively. Swinging the club while coating it in blue energy, he pauses to consider if this blunt force is truly enough to handle the ambiguity of human conflict. He weaves through the training mannequins, acknowledging that a psychic awakener could still leave him vulnerable. Yet he refuses to stall and pushes his physical limits further. He notes that killing a human in survival life grants 50 points, then takes a steadying breath to clear his mind. Preparing for the challenges ahead, he remains mindful of the murderer system that mandates death matches for anyone registered as a killer. Although game mechanics discourage player killing, he knows many will still hunt others for points regardless of the penalties. He weighs the morality of such acts while catching his breath after destroying a training dummy, feeling a sudden surge of power. Deciding it is best to avoid conflict until his farming is complete, he plans to dismantle his store and install a security detector upstairs. A sudden wolf howl interrupts these thoughts, followed by a frantic alert on his device indicating an injury near the hideout. He stands over the dead wolf, asking himself, "Wow, is this for real?" He inspects the body to see if it was a stray or a victim of an attack, needing to identify the cause of death. As he approaches, a small white wolf cub leaps onto his back, startling him. He realizes the cub is grieving its mother. Hesitating to separate them, he knows he must bury the carcass immediately because it will either reanimate as a bone creeper or attract other monsters. After the hard labor of digging, he finally finishes the grave. He watches the cub, catching a glimpse of his own past and the small creature, and decides to take it in. Promising the cub that its mother will rest nearby, he vows to install a special door in his hideout so the little one can visit the grave whenever it feels lonely. To ensure its growth, he provides food, knowing that its keen sense of smell will become an invaluable asset for his own survival. He offers a piece of meat to gain the creature's trust, asking if it will join him in this harsh, unfolding reality. The wolf barks in agreement, and a surge of genuine excitement hits him as they solidify their new partnership. Naming his companion Dingo, he promises to share the truth about the incident from 10 years ago as they continue to bond. The training begins immediately, with Song-ho pushing the young wolf to master the essential skills he teaches. He puts Dingo through rigorous drills, teaching the animal to sit, lie down, and remain perfectly quiet on command. He pauses before the small dog, measuring the weight of his situation. He tosses a magical item into the air to test Dingo's agility. The wolf leaps, narrowly dodging a kick while catching the bone mid-air. Marveling at the wolf's natural tracking abilities, he feels a deep sense of gratitude for the blessing of such a talented partner. Suddenly, an unusual message from Hyung-jun pings his phone, urgently prompting him to search for levitation online. Following Hyung-jun's urgent notification, he pulls up a viral video of a man named Han Jin floating mid-air, a public display of superhuman power that confirms the survival life system is finally bleeding into reality. News rankings explode with reports of the impending apocalypse, though the public remains largely dismissive, treating the footage as a cynical marketing stunt while other awakened individuals scramble in a panic. Disgusted by the online vitriol, he watches as the same people demanding truth mock at the moment it appears, prompting him to resolve that he will dismantle anyone who tries to bury the reality of the coming collapse. With the city descending into a frenzy of protests, he abandons his investigation into government secrets to focus entirely on the upcoming Hobgoblin event, the only metric left to gauge how society will break. He turns to Dingo, stressing that they must begin their exploration immediately, as mastering the game's mechanics in this new, integrated world is their only hope for survival. Moving deep into the forest, he guides the cub to track the scent of goblins, drilling the wolf to identify threats before they can stage an ambush. During these sessions, he pushes Dingo to maintain absolute discipline, testing whether his companion can hold its position and respond to commands under the stress of a real hunt. The wolf suddenly lunges, successfully pinning a giant rabbit to the forest floor, a victory that proves their hunting partnership is a viable way to secure resources. He holds the rabbit, noting judging by the size and the claws. Song-ho secures the rabbit as the local wildlife grows stronger, while Dingo barks. The pair continue their exploration deeper into the forest, navigating the dense, unfamiliar terrain together. Wondering how his companion's cognition might translate into tangible stats, he decides to press toward the valley to put Dingo's combat instinct to the test. A sudden system notification chimes, revealing that Dingo's health has increased by 1, leaving Song-ho shocked, as he recalls his own base health was only 170. Seeing the wolf panting heavily from the exertion, he scolds the pup for wandering too far ahead and offers him a drink of water. As the wolf laps up the water, Song-ho wonders if a strange burning sensation in his own throat is a side effect of the bull pepper he just discovered in the brush. He promises the pup extra treats for his hard work and begins burying his surplus gear to keep it hidden from prying eyes. With that harvest safely tucked away, they venture out for one final hunt, scanning the surroundings for any hidden threats. While the red trout yield no points, he decides the hunt is still worthwhile for the sake of fostering Dingo's growth. Sparing a fish from the stream, he confirms that the experience gain is indeed worth the effort of the excursion. He prepares to finish the second phase of his construction before finally heading back to the hideout. The next day, the hired workers finish the demolition as instructed, and he thanks them for their early start. Watching the shop site being torn down feels heavy, but he forces himself to remain focused on the looming D-Day. He crosses paths with the stranger, but he dismisses the encounter, reflecting on the cold, necessary choices he has made to survive. Observing others looting nearby shops, he accepts the chaos as a natural outcome of the apocalypse, realizing he shares the same desperate survival mindset. He steps out into the alleyway with minimal gear, only for Hyungjung to appear and flick his forehead, demanding to know if he survived the day. Hyungjun eyes Dingo, initially mistaking the white wolf for a simple dog before recognizing the creature's rarity in this crumbling world. Admitting he sought him out of genuine worry, Hyungjun hints that he has also uncovered vital intelligence. Song-ho listens closely as his friend reveals he has finally identified the people who targeted Mi-kyum. Hyungjun confirms that Kim Chul-jun's group, including the local tow truck driver, Oh In-hak, is operating out of a redevelopment site near the mountains. When asked about the source of this intel, Song-ho explains he consulted Han Jun-sung, the levitation-capable awakener seen on reality television. Hyungjun criticizes his cautious approach, while Sang-ho privately recalls his past incompatibility with warlike companions who rejected his invitations to join forces. The gym director notes that female members of that party were likely seduced by a rival awakeners group, prompting them to abandon their original affiliations. Watching his own group chat dissolve as members depart, Sang-ho notes that with only 2 awakened individuals remaining, their survival is increasingly precarious. Hyungjun remarks on the irony of assisting people who only look out for themselves, while Song-ho worries for his daughter Ji-yoon and considers calling his ex-wife. Standing before a statue of Lady Justice, Sang-ho questions if he is doing the right thing, ultimately resolving that he will kill anyone who poses a threat. He declares that while he dislikes hurting others, he will eliminate absolute evil, leaving Hyungjun to question why he is acting so uncharacteristically. Hyungjun presents his phone to Song-ho, whose frustration gives way to shock while Dingo watches from the shadows. Stunned by the incoming message, he agrees with Hyungjun's grim assessment of the threat. Sung-ho notices a warning on his black device and urgently signals for the woman on the balcony to take cover. He finds Oh In-hak there, still cornering the woman despite her desperate refusals to engage. When the blonde man ignores the warning, Sang-ho calls out, demanding he descend before his luck runs out. Kim Cheol-jun and his lackey, Jong-in, mock the ultimatum, claiming the isolated redevelopment site makes his interference a waste of energy. The leader brandishes a bat, reminding him that they too possess awakened abilities. Song-ho pulls on a mask, initiates a countdown, and readies his mallet and slingshot for the confrontation. He strikes with a blast, forcing Kim Cheol-jun to groan, "Ugh." As Song-ho departs, the thugs panic in the dark, shouting, Who's there?" In-hak demands to know who is hiding in the gloom, but the armored assailant strikes immediately, refusing to break their silence. He lands a blow to punish the man who harmed the woman, eliciting a pained, "Ugh." Terror grips the gang as they witness his display of supernatural power, realizing they are utterly outmatched. Seeing the black mist obscure their vision, he strikes again, lunging through the chaos to neutralize the threat. The masked fighter delivers a sweeping kick to the man in the green jacket, pausing for a brief moment to catch their breath. Suddenly, Mi-kyung screams a warning from the bridge, forcing Sung-ho to pivot just as a baseball bat swings toward his head. The bat connects and an energy blast follows, proving that even a glancing blow from these thugs deals real damage. The attacker sneers, questioning if his offensive trait is truly that overpowered before threatening to cripple him right there. Commanding his subordinates to show no mercy, the leader watches as Sung-ho channels his electric power to brace for the incoming onslaught. The blonde man mocks him openly, making no effort to conceal the crackling energy manifesting around his own fists. Panic surges through him, forcing him to weigh the risk of opening a dimensional gate just to escape with his life. The blonde man lunges with electrified strikes, but Dingo darts forward, clamps his jaws onto the attacker's arm, and forces a scream. A bystander watches in horror and threatens to call the police, creating enough of a distraction to force the thugs to back away. They retreat into the shadows, tossing insults about his fragile appearance as they melt back into the darkness. Mi-kyung rushes over to inspect his cracked helmet, her hands trembling as she offers to tend to his wounds. A cold, familiar aura radiates from the retreating group, leaving him with an unsettling sense of foreboding. Refusing to dwell on the danger, he arranges for Mi-kyung to join the other survivors, prioritizing her safety above his own. He slips away into the night with Dingo, leaving the remaining survivors baffled by his sudden, silent departure. Back in his sanctuary, he dives into his Phase 2 setup ahead of schedule, desperate to clear his head and steel his resolve. Watching the others struggle makes him ache to share his power, but he suppresses the impulse, knowing he isn't ready to reveal his hand. He resolves to dominate through superior gear and level advantages, convinced after the scrap with the thugs that he must farm faster than any potential rival. Driven by this urgency, he works tirelessly to stay 3 levels ahead, even as the mounting gap in their strength makes it increasingly difficult to ever party with his allies again. Dingo curls into the warmth, and seeing his companion so comfortable, grants Sing Hong Ho a rare moment of peace. He shifts his focus to the final deliveries arriving at his doorstep, methodically arranging his gear to fortify the hideout for the impending disaster. Determined to be ready, he resolves to pull an all-nighter, laboring until every last piece of equipment is perfectly in place. By D16, the broadcast airwaves buzz with confusion as news outlets highlight the sudden disappearance of the asteroid Yunjambi from all observation. Thomas Chandler attempts to calm the public, confirming that Yunjambi Alpha and Beta have split apart while insisting they pose no threat to the planet. Song-ho recognizes the lie. He knows Yunjambi Beta has already crashed near a ship, triggering the very tsunami that will carry the first zombies to Korean shores. He links these grim milestones while watching reports on President Jang, who has remained in total seclusion ever since the violence in Uido. As whispers of the end times intensify, he observes that the weight of public scrutiny is temporarily keeping criminals and opportunists from acting out. Scrolling through the internet, he listens to the growing chorus of voices complaining about the spreading chaos and debating whether the zombie outbreak is truly unavoidable. A sudden notification jolts him. He stares in disbelief at an active recruitment post from a player known as MyDream. MyDream is a legendary figure famous for his altruism toward newcomers, and seeing his name still appearing in this dying world leaves Song-ho completely stunned. He considers a message from a veteran who has built a reinforced bunker in Busan, but because his own friends have not joined, he chooses not to reach out yet, bookmarking the location for later. He turns his attention back to his hideout work. After spotting a mysterious portal, he resolves to finish the second round of his construction. The next day, he and Dingo arrive at the stone entrance of their base after pulling 2 all-nighters. He realizes the real challenge begins now, as configuring solar power to run his electronics proves trickier than expected. Carefully plugging in his phone, he watches the screen light up after a tense moment to confirm the power is working. The successful connection brings him a rare rush of dopamine, as his survival setup finally feels complete. He recalls finding emeralds, a mineral harder than obsidian during yesterday's excavation, and decides to keep the stones for later. As he prepares to organize his food supplies, Dingo suddenly begins barking. Something is clearly wrong, and he tenses up as his companion growls at a group of approaching creatures. He identifies the pack as direwolves, beast-type monsters from the game, and wonders why they have descended from the mountains. As Dingo growls, he realizes these might be the same creatures that killed the cub's mother, so he signals for silence to avoid immediate detection. Trapped between the monsters, he admits he cannot win this fight, yet he readies his knife and eyes a counterweapon to survive. Knowing he cannot outrun the pack, he settles on a desperate plan to force their alpha into a retreat. Because the wolves are inherently cautious, he decides to break their formation by targeting their leader directly. He readies the pepper spray salvaged from his earlier encounter with kobolds, betting on their hypersensitive sense of smell. Though a failure would leave him defenseless against a full-scale charge, he commits to using the irritant to drive the predator away. Refusing to abandon the hideout he sacrificed so much to build, he braces himself and lunges into the fray. The alpha direwolf reacts instantly, catching him in its powerful jaws amidst the chaos of the sudden skirmish. He activates a gate to create an opening and sprays the beast until it coughs and retreats. Pressing his advantage, he stabs the creature in the eye, successfully scattering the remaining pack members. Exhausted, he pets Dingo and vows to secure his remaining gear, determined to keep them safe in this orderly apocalypse. With the immediate threat neutralized, he clears the basement before making a final supply run to the hardware store and pharmacy to bolster his defenses. 68 hours of continuous wakefulness take their toll, yet he remains too rattled by the direwolf encounter to sleep, fully aware that a werewolf would have spelled his end. Recognizing that his current security is dangerously reactive, he resolves to expand the shelter's perimeter and intensify his aerial drone surveillance. While scouting the city streets for extra farming space and storage capacity, he catches sight of a familiar face. Yu Hyun hails him, cutting through the mental calculations he was performing regarding moat construction and Bluetooth signal coverage. When asked about his presence, Yu Hyun explains he is merely shopping, clarifying that he is not currently in the market for weapons. Song Ho reflects on his growing reliance on magical systems, while Yu Hyun notes that other gym members are currently attempting to purchase arms at the shop. The gym crew remains stubbornly dismissive of his warnings regarding the Iron Death, leaving them blind to the reality of the impending disease. A woman approaches them, and he instantly recognizes her as the local tteokbokki shop owner. She introduces herself as Jo So Yayan, handing over a business card that reveals her true profession as a doctor. Following her lead, he lays out the fundamentals of the survival life system, mirroring the warnings he previously gave to Hyung Jun and Mi Kyung. Though Soo-yeon attempts to rationalize the situation through scientific logic, he reminds her that their reality has fundamentally shifted into a game. She probes whether he is truly awakened, causing him to bristle at the suspicion as he wonders why he is being cast as the antagonist. She offers a friendly smile and a desire to stay in contact. But Sang-ho only nods, his mind already drifting back to the mounting survival tasks. By the following day, he is busy refining his arsenal, finding that even a makeshift polearm now carries the lethal weight of a proper weapon. Calling for Dingo, he stares into the forest and reaffirms his silent, burning promise to finally avenge the Grey Wolf Mother. He strokes the wolf's fur, reminding his companion that they must hunt down any intruders who dare approach their sanctuary, as everyone needs to pull their weight. Scanning the dense brush, he vows to make the pack pay for their intrusion, quickly spotting 4 direwolves prowling the area without their alpha. The local ecosystem is clearly spiraling into chaos as he observes a predatory owl-like monster swooping down to harass the leaderless pack. Seeing their lack of coordination, he seizes the opportunity to scramble up the rocks and ambush the disorganized beasts from above. He deftly traps one wolf in a sturdy net, moving in with calculated efficiency to deliver the final blow. Collecting 3 points from the kill, he turns his gaze toward the remaining stragglers, declaring firmly that he is the one who dictates the rules of this territory. The surviving wolves snarl and surge forward, forcing him to turn and sprint through the dense undergrowth to escape their closing jaws. Sliding behind a boulder, he pulls out his spray can and releases a cloud to fend off the charging predators. He drives his weapon into a lunging wolf while a sudden haunting memory of an old acquaintance flickers in his mind, hardening his resolve to kill. A direwolf lunges, but Sang-han reacts with shock until Dingo intercepts the beast, earning a nod of approval from his companion as the brutal logic of this game-like apocalypse takes hold. He systematically dispatches the remaining wolves, claiming 3 points for each kill because every victory in this unforgiving system bolsters his standing before the final countdown. Upon reaching level 5, his dimensional gate trait undergoes a sudden evolution, granting him invisibility and the ability to project realistic scenery or sounds from the other side. Activating the gate, he marvels at the sight of his own home projected through the rift, confirming that this upgrade finally bridges the gap between his 2 worlds. Realizing that level-ups unlock vital utility, he vows to keep watch for future omens. But first, he drags the defeated carcasses away to bury them and keep his hideout secure. With only 14 days left until the catastrophe, he spends the next 2 days surveying the local ecosystem, eventually confirming that no monsters remain within a 1-kilometer radius. To further fortify his base, he and Dingo clear the surrounding forest to install double-layered barbed wire, while mapping out a 2-meter-deep moat to provide extra defense. While monitoring news reports about the government's plan to investigate all awakened individuals, he continues scavenging for supplies and secretly photographs Kim Chae-jun's hideout. Jodo consumes poison daily to build resistance, granting him enough paralysis toxin to coat his weapons for the coming apocalypse. His attention shifts to a forum post claiming My Dream has recruited Survivor 1, a suspicious bluff linked to government censorship and the president. Though he assumes Survivor 1 would partner with the president to demand a shelter, he remains skeptical of this reported recruitment. To resolve his doubts, he decides to alter his current plans and verify if My Dream truly holds this strategic advantage. He creates a new identity to message the player, successfully luring them into a private virtual meeting room. As My Dream logs into the VR chat, he waits in the shadows, disguised behind a duck mask to keep his identity hidden. The veteran complains about the anonymity, but he warns that provoking him would be a grave mistake. Undeterred, My Dream challenges him to a 3-question quiz to prove his status as a veteran, starting with a query about werewolf jumping height. He answers with data on an owlbear's vulnerability to light and its 3-meter vertical leap. Sun-ho corrects him, clarifying that in survival life, zombies do not spread infection, but instead drain nutrients to evolve into ghouls or enhanced variants. When My Dream demands to see Survivor 1, Sung-ho deflects the inquiry while the other party smugly confirms his veteran status. That mysterious grin widens as the man senses an event approaching, though Seong-ho realizes this is merely a stalling tactic to trace his IP address. Realizing he has been compromised, he watches as the figure in the trench coat vanishes, leaving behind only a chilling, lingering presence. Panic surges at the thought of becoming a puppet, but he quickly triggers his absolute will skill to lock his mind against the intrusion. A man with glowing eyes corners him in the restroom, yet the stranger recoils, stunned by the overwhelming power radiating from Sung-ho. As the intruder shouts for him to come out, he recalls the rule protecting players from non-combatants and steels himself to face his pursuers. Sung-ho splashes a bucket of water across the room, watching as the liquid reveals the outline of an invisible intruder. He quickly manifests a defensive barrier against the wall, relieved that the structure holds firm against the sudden assault. The barrier halts the helmeted attacker in his tracks, and Sung-ho immediately identifies him as a movement type. He notes the bitter, manipulative nature of My Dream while preparing to neutralize the threat. Bitterness defines My Dream, a veteran player who seeks to break other survivors into servitude. The helmeted intruder expresses gratitude toward My Dream before coating his blade with a lethal, toxic substance. Though he initially hesitates, Sung-ho decides to trust his own judgment, choosing to fight back without a shred of mercy. He grips his spear, ready to meet this aggression with equal force. A man in a suit approaches the portal, analyzing the movement-type survivor and searching for the inevitable weaknesses born of excessive playtime. Wiping his hands, he moves toward the helmeted figure, only to be marked by a green highlight as Sung-ho prepares to strike. The man gasps as the weapon connects, watching in terror as green veins pulse and spread across his skin. Sung-ho labels his target as unknown, while the man stares at the creeping infection in horrified silence. He slams the man's head into the concrete, demanding, "Who said you could turn around?" Taunting the victim about the potency of the poison, he drives the man's face into the glass surface. He realizes that because the official apocalypse and tutorial have yet to launch, the killer system remains dormant, allowing him to act without penalty. Pinning the man to the floor, he presses a knife against the victim's throat as he gasps for air in agony. Standing over the paralyzed target, Sung-ho demands to know why he betrayed Survivor 1 and chose to prey on the innocent. After looting the body, Sung-ho tells his opponent he looks more like a lootable monster now, leaving the man to suffer the consequences of his failed attempt to trick and enslave him. Brandishing his weapon, he warns that there will be no mercy next time, watching as the man gasps in agony while his body reacts to the spreading affliction. Returning home later, he enters the other world to prepare for more of My Dream's goons, confirming the identity of his fallen foe as Kwon Kyung-jun, a 38-year-old golf club owner who had attempted to bunker down. Kyung-jun had been notorious for his affairs and his obsessive attempts to improve his traits through repeated gameplay, hoping to gain power as the apocalypse accelerated the world's transformation into a game. Wondering if more playtime truly guarantees better traits, Sung-ho considers that for a veteran, his own trait functions as a cheat code, though he keeps this hypothesis guarded until he finds more evidence. He attaches a silencer to his pistol, well aware that being awakened naturally grants physical stats far beyond those of ordinary people, and practices his aim as the deadline draws near. Suddenly, his interface is flooded with alerts reporting monster activity at Gyasan, including goblin sightings that confirm the second omen has officially begun. A year passes in a blur, and he races toward Hwangsan Reservoir under the cover of night after hearing similar reports, pulling over to contemplate his next move as the game-like reality demands his immediate attention. He glances down at Dingo, reminding the wolf that they are currently on a goblin hunting mission. Driving his vehicle up the mountain, he knows the police will cordon off the area as soon as the commotion grows. Because the goblins have established a makeshift base under Hobgoblin command, he must move quickly to intercept them. He signals for his companion to track the scent, and the white wolf confirms the target is nearby. Maneuvering through the dense, misty forest, he searches for a path that offers the tactical advantage he needs. A grim scene emerges ahead, where he discovers that the goblins have already incapacitated several police officers. Realizing the officers are paralyzed by poison rather than physical wounds, he pauses to prepare the necessary stabilization. He notes the missing firearms and inspects a dead goblin, confirming that the police were indeed armed before their defeat. Suddenly, he spots a rare gold goblin carrying loot and determines that he cannot let such a prize escape. He uses one of the officers' phones to call for help and report the location, ensuring the authorities handle the aftermath. With these monster sightings going viral, he knows it is a race against time and relies on Dingo to continue the hunt. Following the scent, Song-ho spots a man blocking a heavy strike, only for a green goblin to ambush him with a wooden club, forcing the man into a desperate defense. He tries to reassure his panicked companion, though the aftermath of the skirmish leaves several motionless bodies on the ground as the goblins gather over a fallen comrade. A subordinate questions his own role as a tank without having awakened, but the boss sighs and prepares his telekinetic powers, knowing the situation is already beyond his control. He manipulates floating stones to attack, hoping to gain a tactical advantage while his allies struggle to navigate the difficult terrain of Gyasan. A projectile hits the creature while its ally shouts, "I'll cover you," but he wonders if his own team will arrive. Though the targets have reached the mountain, the group struggles to ascend, leaving survivors to panic and debate, fleeing from the encroaching threat. Song-ho urges his companion to see this as an opportunity, noting that these goblins lack their usual weaponry, making them easier to fight than in the game. As someone offers help, Song-ho catches his breath and prepares to face his opponent. The goblins coordinate to hunt the separated hobgoblin squad to secure an advantage, so the boss orders his subordinate to stop complaining and focus. After casting a spell, the man tries to rest, but a creature lunges and strikes him in the face, causing it to growl in frustration. Clutching his arm in pain, he wonders how even a minor goblin figured out a counter as the group finds themselves cornered. They fight for survival against the encroaching pack, screaming in the darkness as they struggle to hold their ground. Song-ho pierces a goblin's head with his spear, while a mysterious blue energy beam strikes another, killing the creatures instantly. Surprised by the sudden arrows that felled the monsters, the man cautiously explores the misty forest, shield raised against the unknown. She wonders if her intervention was pointless given her own mounting problems. Admitting she does not know the answer, she demands to know why he intervened, but Song-ho maintains that he has already paid a fair price for his presence, steering the tense exchange toward the immediate tactical reality. He notes that the local field prevents other awakened users from accessing this specific zone, providing him with a rare, isolated opportunity to call the weakened goblin mob. With time running short, he finalizes his strategy to bait the monsters, meticulously positioning his gear and supplies to create a lethal bottleneck. He draws their attention by hurling a rock into the thicket, successfully luring the group toward the dimensional gate to utilize its frame as a fortified defensive wall. His plan relies on inflicting enough agony to keep the creatures screaming and fixated on the rift, allowing him to strike them down precisely as they cross the threshold. After skewering a goblin with his spear, he jerks the weapon back through the portal, effectively erasing any physical evidence of his intervention from the forest floor. The high-insight hobgoblin soon stumbles upon its fallen underlings and, baffled by the lack of an attacker, orders the remaining terrified goblins to scour the immediate area. As the monsters advance, Song-ho lunges from the shadows, slicing through their ranks in a single, fluid motion to maintain his hard-won momentum. He pauses briefly, caught off guard when the goblins begin bickering amongst themselves, a chaotic distraction that completely disrupts his tactical expectations for the skirmish. Capitalizing on their infighting, he decides to commit fully to the assault, though the sudden volatility of the battle forces him to struggle for his footing. A kick sends Song-ho into a tree and he gasps, "Crap, it hurts more than I expected." He endures an energy blast, his health plummeting until his survival craving skill kicks in. He channels energy and dashes past the monster to reposition himself. Song-ho aims his weapon and strikes the goblin, its scream echoing through the forest as he draws blood. As green fluid leaks from the wound, he quickly collects the loot through a portal before the situation escalates. He baits the yellow monster into landing a hit, then taunts the creature, knowing he is in control of this combat encounter. Retaliating with a high-speed kick, he forces the wounded monster to cry out in agony. The system confirms his level up to 6, granting him the terrain sense skill, which allows him to anticipate every environmental threat. He secures a dexterity bonus from new gloves, realizing these tactical upgrades are essential for his team contribution. Suddenly, an alarm blares, warning him that a search party is closing in on his location. He gathers his remaining spoils and activates a barrier to hide until the sweep concludes, treating the area like a dungeon floor. The next day, he wakes in his hideout with Dingo by his side after sleeping through the entire day. Resolving to avoid triggering survival craving unless absolutely necessary, he prepares to inspect his haul before heading toward the infirmary. With 9 days until the apocalypse, he refuses to help those who seek to use him. He turns his attention to the spoils of the hunt, marveling at a mithril knife that feels indestructible. Likely immune to the impending Iron Death Plague, a goblin holding a high-tier item makes no sense, so he examines the blade, noting, "The surface is bumpy. While he promises himself a full report on these findings, he wonders if the goblin civilization has somehow evolved the capacity to forge such advanced weaponry. Could this be the result of a sudden mutation he muses, though he finds it hard to believe their primitive nature could undergo such a drastic shift? Shifting his focus to the remaining loot, he uncovers a cluster of shadow grapes, providing the biological explanation for how these diurnal creatures maintain their nocturnal activity. A glance at his status window confirms his level has climbed to 6, a growth rate that is significantly outpacing anything he experienced in the original game. With his immediate objectives in the other world met, he opens a portal, but the transition creates an unexpected violent surge of energy that rattles his bones. Upon returning to his own world, his phone lights up with a flood of urgent messages from Hyungjun, Mi Kyung, and Soo Yeon, signaling his sudden, unintended importance. He briefly contemplates the mysterious creator of this reality before deciding to head straight to the fitness center. Waiting for him there, Hyungjun and Mi Kyung greet him with overwhelming relief, clearly having been deeply worried by his abrupt disappearance. Hyungjun introduces his new party members Kanghoon and Bo-ra, who immediately recognize the protagonist from the stories they have heard. Determined to draw out the killer, he listens as they mention another ally currently scouting a nearby camping store for supplies. The conversation turns to the state-of-the-art camping gear shop that has recently opened, a potential gold mine for their preparations. When they ask about the recent incident, he confirms that he has scoured Matube, finding the doctor who dissected the Gaiasan goblin now in a state of visible distress. Following the online panic, authorities issue a dire warning to prepare for the end, prompting President Jong to convene an emergency National Security Council meeting to track the creator of Survival Life and consult with the Awakened. Amidst the tense gathering at the gym, a muscular survivor seeks advice from Sang Ho-ho, who dismisses the request because he already provided clear guidance on prioritizing essential supplies over hunting low-level goblins. When Kyung-hoon insists on the necessity of hunting for growth, Song-ho interrupts to correct him, noting that such efforts offer negligible level gains compared to the critical need for stockpiling resources. He questions Kyung-hoon's gaming experience, warning that relying blindly on common community information is a dangerous gamble within this reality-bending system. Mi-kyung then asks about the specific conditions for zombie infection, and Sang Hong-ho explains that those who have made direct contact with an awakened individual are shielded from the virus. He reveals his own awakening stems from his direct contact with the system, assuring the group that his presence acts as a buffer of safety for them. After a brief, light-hearted moment shared with Mi-kyung, he vows to protect them all, though some of the onlookers remain visibly skeptical of his bold claims. Sonho acknowledges the theory of awakened immunity to spores is plausible even without concrete proof, sharing the group's mutual doubt regarding the reliability of the other people present. Refusing to waste more intelligence on those he dislikes, he leaves the gym to keep to his own strict schedule. While walking home, he mentally revises his farming route to prepare for the looming metal death plague, carefully calculating which supply stores are worth the effort. Upon reaching his house, he finds Soo Yeon waiting for him, eager to hand over an item she brought. She produces a medical kit, noting that once their current stock of prescription painkillers and antibiotics runs out, they can simply forge more. Tucking her address into the pouch, she reminds him that their agreement necessitates mutual knowledge of their respective locations. He agrees, and as she departs to check on the director, she issues one final reminder for him to keep his promise and remember where to find her. Reflecting on her intense energy, he spends the following days in a blur of activity, treating the orderly apocalypse with the same precision he once applied to the game. He stocks up on supplies and builds a warehouse in the other world for his gear. Meanwhile, global chaos erupts as fatalists and skeptics clash on live television, while the UN convenes emergency meetings to address the rapidly escalating crisis. The HSA watches in horror as their projections fail, realizing that the entities known as Nozambi Beta and Azambi Alpha have begun their descent to Earth, signaling the true start of the invasion. 4 days pass, and Sanghwan Aw arrives at Gamcheon port to intercept the Russian ship event, landing there exactly 5 days before the final collapse. He slips into a derelict building and opens a portal, knowingly risking infection by the zombie pathogen to secure additional firearms from the incoming vessel. He understands that the zombie spores act as a highly permeable particle beam, a lethal threat that is already claiming those who remain unprepared for the infection. Accepting that infection is an unavoidable fate in this orderly apocalypse. He focuses on gathering supplies, feeling that with his family gone, he has nothing left to lose. Though he considers hiding in the other world, he questions the value of such an existence. Instead, he remains determined to survive and finishes his preparations for the mission. Choosing this unique path serves as his way of navigating the game-like reality, embracing the high risk of his actions for the potential rewards that follow. He analyzes new system patch notes regarding the arrival of zombie beta and the reduced durability of zombies, suspecting the admin anticipated this apocalypse all along, before a sudden alarm interrupts his thoughts. He sees the event starting and realizes the danger as marine life washes onto the piers. He warns others not to involve him in their internal squabbles while reaching toward a mysterious, glowing light emerging from the turbulent sea. Seeing the vessel in the glowing water, he realizes the scale of the disaster and curses, "Feck me." Feeling helpless against such a natural disaster, he decides he would prefer to fight zombies instead. He trembles with anxiety but knows he must move quickly to scout the area. Rushing to secure his equipment, he prepares to escape before government agents arrive. Realizing that the phenomenon unfolding is far more complex than simple magic, he steers his motorboat toward the cargo ship to finish his objectives. After securing his rope to the side, he notes the strange glowing symbols etched into the hull and sticks to his original plan. The apocalypse is a game, and as Kyung-hoon predicted, awakened individuals like him possess a crucial immunity to the virus. With thoughts of the one who murdered her lingering, he climbs the ladder, deciding that moving forward is the only way to honor his goal. Readying his mace and shield, he prepares to engage these creatures within the grim reality of this orderly apocalypse. These zombies are unique. Unlike the game's infection settings, they view everything as potential prey and grow stronger by consuming nutrients. They charge with ravenous hunger, but he subdues them. Refusing to let these monsters bare their teeth at him, he forces them down and prepares to strike, his spiked mace poised to end their threat for good. Delivering a powerful, glowing energy strike, he is surprised to find that these enemies seem significantly nerfed compared to their original game design. After gaining 4 points, he reminds himself not to let his guard down, having learned a painful lesson from his past mistake with the orcs. He grips his weapon tightly, determined that a single mistake is enough for a veteran player, and stares ahead in sudden surprise. Seeing the swarm, he decides to clear the hallway, methodically striking down enemies to bolster his point total. He earns 2 more points and pushes toward the wheelhouse, needing to secure a pistol to round out his arsenal. He realizes that perhaps even an unawakened person could survive exposure to the spores, provided they have had 0 contact with an awakened one. He rushes into the room to rescue the captives, desperate to confirm the truth about his situation, though his frustration mounts with every passing second. Finding a person hiding in the darkness, he discovers only a bloodied individual and a photograph of a woman left behind. The masked protagonist checks his gear, offering a grim remark to the injured man because he knows comfort is a luxury in this cruel reality. He activates his absolute will skill, shielding his mind from corruption before moving out to continue the mission. Stepping over a corpse, he resigns himself to the fact that killing is now a necessary survival mechanic in this unfolding apocalypse. After cutting the rope to escape by motorboat, he is shocked to see another person on the water who shares his strange obsession with farming. He treats this dangerous journey as mere travel practice, refusing to engage in the hypocritical behavior that he finds so nauseating. On the mainland, President Zhang initiates emergency military and government responses, confirming that the leader's strategic thinking aligns perfectly with his own. He prepares his final justification and decides to share vital intelligence during a high-stakes phone call. Connecting with the administrator Lee, he reveals his identity to ensure the authorities take his warning about the impending D-Day seriously. He questions a discrepancy regarding a hobgoblin's injury, shocking Lee with the sheer extent of his inside knowledge. Finally, he warns that D-Day arrives on July 20th at 1300, instructs Lee to use the arriving package wisely, and abruptly ends the call. The administrator responds to the warning with a calm, measured voice, offering to explain the underlying situation in greater detail. Song-ho reflects on the president's decisiveness as the man in the suit stands enveloped in a powerful, flickering blue aura. Online panic surges as he scrolls through messages detailing soldiers swarming industrial complexes and looming power grid shutdowns, though he suspects many of these reports are exaggerated. A sudden public announcement crackles over the airwaves, ordering all citizens to secure 4 days of food and water before returning home to their families. He watches the broadcast as officials command a total cessation of business activities, promising a comprehensive update on July 20th at 9 a.m. The finality of his decision to reveal the truth settles in, and he notes with grim satisfaction that the public response is unfolding exactly as expected. Briefly, he wonders if acting sooner might have changed the outcome, but he dismisses these intrusive thoughts since the disaster was always inevitable. Recalling his original resolve, he reaffirms that he is no hero, but merely an ordinary man caught in the gears of a terminal event. Trapped by the impending lockdown, he chooses to spend his remaining freedom within the depths of the otherworld. 3 days before the event, he continues excavating his moat, though the sheer scale of the labor suggests it will take several more days to complete. While scouting the perimeter with Dingo 2 days before the catastrophe, he stumbles upon a valuable discovery hidden in the brush. The discovery of glowing solar apples leads him to suspect that this entire forest is a magically fertile landscape. Spotting a shriveled grape on the floor, he frowns and questions Dingo about the theft, sternly demanding the truth. He observes that the culprit has not changed his habits at all, while the distressed wolf whimpers in response to the accusation. Watching the creature's genuine reaction, he realizes that Dingo is innocent of the petty crime. He decides to review the security footage on his laptop to identify the true thief. The screen reveals 3 Pongdung-e creatures entering through the doggy door, trading a grape for his snacks and making off with his jelly. He watches in disbelief as the intelligent creatures interact with his food, wondering how they manage to develop such complex self-awareness. Frustrated by these persistent pests, he realizes he must secure his perimeter before the situation spirals further out of his control. He locks the doggy door to keep Dingo safely inside, ensuring the small wolf remains protected while he prepares for his expected guests. Opening a portal to his hideout, he waits for the group, determined to establish his authority before the impending apocalypse descends in earnest. 5 survivors arrive in the living room exactly as planned, managing to reach the meeting point despite the suffocating reach of the new martial law. When he asks for an introduction, the group presents Yu Hyun, the final member joining them from the gym circle. Though Hyun admits he lacks experience with the game, he offers his background as an electrical engineering student, a technical asset that Song-ho immediately recognizes as valuable. Song-ho introduces himself simply as a survivor, offering a firm handshake to seal their alliance and establish a baseline of trust. Turning the conversation toward their survival, he demands they pool every scrap of information they possess to better navigate the coming disaster. Hyung-jun recounts his desperate attempts to reach his daughter after his phone connection failed, a path that led him straight into the heart of the spreading chaos. He describes being turned away by a police blockade on the highway, a grim encounter that forced him to confront the harsh reality of the government's containment zones. The group discusses reports that residents near the Ulsan petrochemical complex are being evacuated by force as authorities struggle to suppress the outbreak. Soo-yeon hears about the shelter in the park, but she asks how that is even possible. Mi-kyung adds that high-ranking officials who challenged the president's directives have already been detained, signaling deep instability within the government. Listening intently, Song-ho catalogs this intelligence while keeping his identity as a veteran player hidden, choosing to guide them through logic rather than his past reputation. He knows that commanding this group requires more than just orders. He must provide cold, evidence-based reasoning for every demand he makes. Taking a steadying breath, he asks for their full attention as he prepares to unveil the calculated reality of their situation. He drops the bombshell that the president is intentionally orchestrating an orderly apocalypse, leaving the survivors reeling from the implication of a state-managed collapse. Sung-ho questions the recent strange restrictions, noting that all state facilities have been halted for 4 days. The group asks why the government made this choice, and he realizes that is the end. He explains that the government identified the D-Day event, which occurs on July 20th when the lockdown lifts, a revelation that leaves the room in stunned silence. To ensure they survive the transition, he decides to share his tutorial strategy guide and essential game information with the group. One member reveals he learned the truth by watching his old videos, prompting him to apologize to Mi-kyung for his past deception, though she admits she also kept her own secrets. He tells them they are free to use his intelligence, provided they strictly follow his tutorial manual to stay alive. As midnight strikes, he reflects on the 32 days of grueling preparation he has invested to endure the coming event. Despite his hard work, he admits his plans are not perfect and fears his past selfish decisions might return to haunt him. Yet he remains resolute. Clenching his glowing fist, he declares he has no regrets as he faces the inevitable collapse of society. He watches the onset of the apocalypse to his binoculars, confirming with his own eyes that the disaster is truly unavoidable. He stares into the distance while planning to hunt down his enemy. He reinforces his hideout with bulletproof glass and heavy doors, then proceeds with his daily, agonizing routine of injecting paralysis poison to build resistance. He pushes his physical limits with 300 push-ups, knowing that maximizing his poison resistance is the only way to endure the coming chaos. He adjusts his gloves, ready for the skirmishes ahead. Following a quiet breakfast with Dingo, he waits in the silence of the hideout for the clock to strike 9 a.m. The pair remains in the living room until the sudden flicker of the ceiling lights confirms that the system has finally activated. On screen, Jang Won-taek addresses the nation, formally announcing that martial law is in effect as of 5:00 p.m. on July 16th to seize control of all critical infrastructure. Son-ho watches the broadcast, struck by the calculated precision with which the president has orchestrated this collapse, though he remains anxious about the impending arrival of the zombie spores. Though he once harbored a desperate hope that this disaster could be averted, he now resolves to survive the catastrophe with the cold efficiency of a veteran gamer. With only 4 hours left until the spores descend, he remains on high alert, keeping his senses sharp while Dingo watches the perimeter. He spends these final moments double-checking his warehouse and prepping the specific equipment he will rely on once the metal death plague renders all modern technology obsolete. Outside, reality has devolved into a living hell where the desperate claw at one another for survival, or choose to plunge to their deaths rather than face the encroaching darkness. Some individuals give in to their darkest impulses, with one man standing in the street and openly mocking the world, convinced that the end makes his violent desires meaningless. Others descend into ruthless cruelty, discarding their humanity to kill without a hint of guilt as the social order crumbles. 3 men corner a victim near a damaged pickup truck, justifying their brutality as a necessary precaution to ward off bad luck before the plague claims them all. The man in the red vest suddenly turns and points his bat toward the rooftop where Sung-ho is watching, warning him to avoid becoming a zombie unless he wants to be harvested for points. Sun-ho blinks in surprise, momentarily baffled by why anyone would choose to declare war with such theatrical flair while the world is ending. He glances upward as a plane passes overhead to scatter leaflets, sarcastically noting the government's futile final effort to maintain a veneer of public safety. Gripping the map to a secret time shelter, he reflects on the twisted nature of humanity and reaffirms that his own hard-won strength is the only currency that truly matters. He turns from the streets and steps through the portal. With only 3 minutes left before the spores descend, Sung-ho makes final adjustments to his motorcycle to ensure he can verify the reality of the impending collapse. He glances at his stockpiled supplies, questioning if they will truly be enough to endure the metal death plague. Yet he reassures Dingo that he has everything under control. Mentally retracing his farming route, he remains convinced that some unseen force is testing him to see if he will finally break under the mounting pressure. A flicker of doubt crosses his mind as he wonders if he failed to remove all non-magical metal before the plague hits. Though he sarcastically dismisses the paranoia, certain he has done all he can. Donning his helmet at exactly time, he kicks the bike into gear and prays his strategy holds, just as the lethal spores begin to blanket South Korea. As the outbreak takes hold, he watches from the saddle as people in the streets freeze, the dawning horror of the true zombie threat etched into their faces. Nearby, a man collapses, gasping as he is suffocated by an unseen force, while the first infected creatures with glowing red eyes rise to begin their hunt. 3 zombies lunge toward him, but he simply twists the throttle and roars away on his motorcycle, leaving the monsters in the dust. He notes with clinical detachment that the initial zombie count is lower than expected, acknowledging that most people chose to spend their final moments huddled with their families. Wondering if any non-infected survivors are left nearby, he ultimately decides their absence is a blessing, as they would only serve as an obstacle to his farming progress. Leaning into a sharp turn, he spots an unlocked shutter and pries it open with his hammer, wasting no time as he breaches the building. He tells Dingo to stay put for a moment, then shatters the glass and rips open a portal to navigate the space with greater urgency. Vaulting over a display table, he notes that the spores require time to fully corrupt their hosts, allowing him to loot the pharmacy before the staff can become a threat. Dingo watches the portal drop a supply of medicine to finish the run. Checking his watch, Sung-ho realizes that if he maintains this blistering pace, he will finish his tasks far faster than he ever dared to hope. He scoffs at the double security gate, questioning if such an elaborate barrier is truly necessary for a simple store. Anticipating these obstacles, he readies his oxygen cutter to burn through the reinforced lock. The tool shrieks with a volume far louder than he expected, but he focuses entirely on the shadows shifting toward him. Although the recent system patch reduced their ability to track organic life, the zombies still lurch closer to his position. Recalling the Russian vessel incident, he notes that these unfit early zombies are sluggish, so he steps forward to engage. The nerf to their stats makes them clumsy targets, and he quickly claims the sword mastery and swordsmanship skills as they fall. He slashes through the pack with ease, proving that even a novice can dismantle these mobs by striking their exposed weak points. Sung-ho vows to slaughter his attackers, realizing that this reality is far less punishing than the game he once knew. Points accumulate with every kill, but he must quickly decide how to handle the larger, encroaching group of infected. Normally, he would lure them into a narrow alley, but with his movement restricted, he is forced to improvise. He swings the heavy oxygen cutter to knock the lead creatures down, warning the bastards that he only ignored them to save time. A sharp burst of energy ripples outward to prove he was never afraid, establishing his absolute dominance in the fray. The zombies continue to swarm, yet he strikes back with a relentless, calculated force that keeps them at bay. He mocks their feeble attempts, questioning if they really think they can defeat a veteran with 5,500 hours of experience who has survived much worse. Surveying the bodies, Song-ho listens to the silence, deciding to offer a final repayment to ensure nothing returns. He ignites a blowtorch with a sigh, deciding to send the remains off with a bang to ensure nothing returns. With the battle concluded, he finishes looting the hardware store and turns his bike toward the police substation. The armory is empty, and he worries he arrived too late for the gear he needs. In the parking lot, he discovers a corpse with a bag over its head and, despite the grim surroundings, secures the items he came for. Pushing toward his fourth location, he finds himself pursued by a swarm of zombies on his motorcycle. He remains calm, his perception and dexterity bolstered by the terrain sense skill looted from a hobgoblin. Dodging the horde with ease, he reaches a motorcycle shop only to realize others have had the same idea, to scavenge for transport. Admitting the portal is overpowered, he prepares to farm again, but new enemies finally reveal their presence. Two men on a motorcycle with a sidecar ambush him, shouting insults and channeling golden lightning as they demand to know why he is not staying home like an unawakened. The helmeted rider channels lightning into the ground, launching himself forward in a blur of lethal speed. A voice mocks his obsession, causing the target to crumble in visible, tearful distress. Song-ho readies a portal, but he freezes, his heart lurching at the sight of a girl in the distance who resembles his lost daughter. The two men ignore the distraction, barking orders to watch for zombies while closing in with aggressive threats. The system issues a warning after his first kill as he tracks his prey to the blue rift. The man wonders where his opponent vanished, the sudden silence weighing on his mind until the realization of danger hits. Before he can react, a hand clamps onto his back and he realizes with a jolt that his attacker isn't awakened. He scoffs at the man's panic, demanding to know what he took before kicking him away. A final, cold warning to change his ways echoes as the man collapses to his knees in terror. His companion stares in disbelief while the protagonist berates the looter for spouting hypocritical nonsense about morality. Calling the man selfish trash, he draws his weapon, his voice dripping with contempt for the man's moral posturing. The thug fires his pistol, but Sang-ho dodges the red energy strike. He plants his feet, declaring that this territory is now under his authority and daring anyone to challenge him. Crouching before his defeated foe, the masked figure agrees that they are both trash, feeling a strange clarity wash over him. He admits their similarities while the man chokes out pleas for mercy, his voice failing under the pressure. 50 points flash in his vision, yet the act of ending a life leaves a far dirtier stain on his soul than he ever anticipated. He clutches his helmet, trembling as he realizes the consequences of his actions. A man stumbles upon the scene and shouts for Ma Jong-in, drawing his attention to the carnage. Nearby, a victim screams for help while being mauled, eventually falling silent as their hand drops lifelessly to the pavement. Watching this, the protagonist glares with cold intensity, convinced these antagonists deserve to be culled by the apocalypse itself. He triggers the murderer system, a flawed regulatory tool originally implemented to curb trolling, which ultimately collapsed under its own mismanagement. A hooded figure leaps from the shadows to ambush a man, causing the system to begin tracking the protagonist after his initial warning levels strike. The system brands him a murderer after his third kill, a title he accepts with a grin. He finds the game atmosphere exhilarating once more, thanks to these unique abilities injected into the code just 1 week before the final shutdown. Every advantage carries a heavy price, however, and he acknowledges the cursed condition that forces a designated murderer to continue the slaughter. He manifests a death field, an automatic barrier that materializes whenever 3 players congregate, trapping them in a mandatory deathmatch. A mysterious entity accompanied by a bunny-eared spirit looms behind a terrified man, contemplating which skill to bestow upon the protagonist next. While this power seems like a boon, he understands that against late-game veterans, this mechanic serves only as a lethal poison. Leaving a trail of blood in his wake, he pauses to notice his own pulse has vanished, a grim indicator of his shifting humanity. Realizing the system is not yet fully active since the tutorial has yet to begin, he resolves to meet this injustice with his own brand of cruelty, raising a loaded crossbow. Setting a new internal rule for future encounters, he stores his weapon and closes the portal to maintain total control over his environment before the tutorial begins. He walks through the white-tiled halls at 4:30 p.m., his throat tightening with frustration as he tracks the dwindling time remaining. Through his binoculars, he observes a building besieged by zombies, his mind flashing back to his recent, successful supply runs at the heavy equipment company and the pesticide shop. He watches a group of 5 men struggling to hold their ground until an enemy spear shatters the window, triggering a sudden, violent confrontation. When he orders the group to abandon the building, one man shouts back that the surrounding horde makes escape impossible, forcing him to mock the man's lack of foresight. As the man in the red hoodie threatens him with a crossbow, he taunts the attacker to fire, then draws his own gun and shoots, demonstrating the lethal player hunting skills he once honed in Seola. The man in the white jacket screams as the bullet tears through his shoulder, and as his companions cry out in shock, he declares that the apocalypse demands survival of the fittest, threatening to execute the next person who speaks. The injured group retreats in terror, followed by his mocking reminder that they would have survived had they simply listened to his earlier warning. As a final parting gift for their previous dismissal, he screams insults while swinging a baseball bat, intentionally creating enough noise to draw the zombie swarm directly toward them. He tracks their flight through a sniper scope, watching with detached coldness as the encroaching horde moves in to claim them. With his farming tasks finished and only an hour remaining, he debates whether to abandon the battalion to reach the apartment complex, ultimately deciding to proceed with Dingo by his side. Predicting where the largest masses of zombies will congregate at the outbreak's start, he arrives at a hypermarket, certain that the abundance of food will draw the largest, most dangerous hordes. He approaches the hypermarket, a location most avoid, yet his 1,000 hours of playtime transform this death trap into a strategic training ground to gain an edge before the tutorial begins. Pausing with Dingo, he calculates that power leveling here is his best chance to reach level 10 and unlock the shop. So, he checks his gear to ensure he is ready to grind for the resources required to survive. Standing outside the warehouse, he reflects on the hollowness of his preparations while noting that the metal death plague has left the floors slick with oil, a resource he decides to exploit immediately. To him, this is merely a tactical calculation to bank experience for his wolf before the 1300 deadline. So he signals his partner to execute their practice maneuver, and Dingo lunges into the fray. The white wolf strikes the zombies, easily outpacing the snarling beasts. Weaving through the horde, Dingo lands swift, powerful strikes while maneuvering through the debris, staying one step ahead of the encroaching undead. Once the pack is lured into a tight group, Sanghal tosses a lighter into the oil-slicked ruins, and the resulting explosion incinerates the pursuers with the efficiency of a seasoned veteran. By 5:40 p.m., he has successfully raided the market and secured the necessary computer towers and NAS units, storing them by locking a portal's coordinates in the middle of the road. Knowing the surrounding structures are on the verge of collapse, he discards his motorcycle and steps through the rift into the other world, leaving the ruins behind for good. He mounts his motorcycle, having swapped his usual gear for non-metallic items like an UHMWPE helmet and aramid fiber vest to avoid potential interference. Retreating to a training ground 1 kilometer from his shelter, he focuses on finishing his preparations in total isolation. A final check of his attire confirms that removing all metal zippers and buckles keeps his profile consistent for the coming collapse. With only 3 minutes remaining, a sense of unease settles in his chest as he readies his final equipment. Because zombie spores and the Iron Death travel on the wind, he stays at this remote location, planning to run if his gear begins to crumble. He squeezes a metallic sphere, focuses entirely on the task, and commands the portal to open. The disaster drags humanity back to the Stone Age in an instant. Even as the rift manifests to reveal the ruined landscape, he braces for the portal, but his injuries force him to seek the infirmary first. An explosion rocks the city, making him wonder if the infantry battalion's depot was destroyed. Shaking off the distraction, he remembers the urgency of the iron beads and breathes a sigh of relief when he finally secures the metallic sphere. Refusing to call this outcome good, he closes the portal and prepares to return to his shelter to stick to his survival plan. He conjures a blue energy shield and releases a burst of power to clear his path, methodically preparing for the challenges ahead. Back at his shelter, he finds himself baffled to see a group of beetle-like creatures gathered at his door, seemingly carrying a wooden plank. When one of the creatures hands him a root, he pauses, wondering if this strange gesture is an apology gift. He attempts to communicate, offering them food in hopes of bartering perhaps for sweet potato jelly, but they remain cryptic. His patience wears thin, yet when he catches a better glimpse of the creatures, he is surprised to realize they are actually quite cute. Blushing in embarrassment, he clarifies that he needs strange or special items, not food, but size when he realizes they cannot hold a conversation. Just as he turns away, a small red creature uses a stick to trace a line in the dirt, catching his attention. He is stunned when he realizes the creature is proposing a trade of ore for jelly, illustrating its plan through a diagram on the ground. Reaching out to the creature, he prepares to accept the deal, but pulls back momentarily to ensure he is not being too hasty. The creatures whisper among themselves, and the red beetle excitedly interprets his silence as a formal agreement. A system notification appears, prompting him to form a contract with the boss black beetle. He stares into the light, stunned, as a system window confirms the successful communion, and the boss beetle now extends a formal contract. Tapping the holographic interface to accept, he finds the terms bizarrely rigid for an insect, demanding a steady supply of sweet potato jelly in exchange for rare ores. A small red beetle suddenly manifests at his side, vibrating with an eagerness to begin its new assignment. Rushing toward the stone doorway, he attempts to corral the group. Realizing their cooperation is fueled entirely by their insatiable hunger, he tosses them bags of sweet potato snacks as a signing bonus, watching them celebrate with a frantic dance while he warns them that theft will be met with a lethal hunt. Staring them down, he makes it clear that he will track them to the ends of the earth if they fail to deliver the requested items, though a sudden chilling presence forces him to freeze. Memories of the night the apocalypse began wash over him, reminding him how he chose to scavenge for supplies rather than seek rest during those final, precious hours. Inspecting his gear, he notes the impressive quality of his haul, specifically the ceramic knife, a rare, non-metallic tool that is perfect for his survival needs. Seeking to expose the remnant's hideout, he connects the hard drive salvaged from the studio apartment to his docking station to unearth their hidden secrets. Sifting through the terabytes of data, he stumbles upon a cache of media files that harbor a completely unexpected revelation. He pauses at a video of a girl dancing on the monitor and realizes with shock that Mi Kyung was once an idol, though he concedes her beauty makes the fact unsurprising. He deletes the file, realizing that dwelling on the past is a luxury he cannot afford while the world burns. Opening the level 10 shop interface, he finds the familiar layout of his old game, though the price tags have shifted significantly since the latest patch. He spots a recurring tutorial bug in the system and immediately pivots to test his new dimensional slot trait against it. Accessing the subspace pocket, he organizes his essential gear into these quick slots, finally gaining the inventory precision he craved. Registering his primary weapons into the slots, he realizes he no longer needs to rely on hiding gear behind the portal. It is a late-game carry trait that streamlines his entire combat flow. After commanding Dingdo to secure the house, he steps into the portal, fully committed to clearing the tutorial. Haunted by memories of his past cowardice, he emerges into the ruined city, where the oppressive darkness quickly forces him to rely on his terrain sense. He reaches for his shade grapes, choosing to burn through his limited supplies rather than risk a fatal mistake in the pitch-black streets. With his vision sharpened by the fruit, he peers through the debris to spot the rows of zombies waiting in the shadows. Reaching a secure vantage point, he pulls off his helmet, his eyes glowing as he scans the debris-choked streets. The interface remains frustratingly silent, failing to warn him of the spectral figures haunting the ruins. The sight of the wall of flesh confirms the tutorial has officially begun. He studies the shifting barricade, calculating the precise timing of these formations to decode the apocalypse's hidden logic. Sensing the system reacts to his proximity or the presence of hidden rewards, he lunges forward, cutting down the nearest creature in a blur of motion. Ignoring the surrounding carnage, he shatters a nearby window and reaches inside to grab a white plastic crate. He pauses briefly to confirm the coast is clear, his gaze fixing on a void in the air to force the system to reveal its secrets, vowing vengeance against those who orchestrated this hell. Blocking a sudden energy slash, he snatches up an ebony club, noting with bitter recognition that it is a perfect replica of the shop's original stock. Glancing at the latest patch notes, he observes that while the zombies have become easier to kill, the ways to farm points have grown increasingly complex. As the moans of the horde intensify, he forces himself to slow down, creeping through a doorway to slip past the undead undetected. He maneuvers past the undead, striking one with his blade while declaring he will fight until he is sick of it. Embracing the violence, he leaps high above the press of bodies, ruthlessly tearing through the swarm until nothing remains standing. He sprints from the horde, noting the wall of zombies closing in as he prepares to smash through. He lunges into the fray as the swarm closes in, forcing him into a desperate, chaotic struggle for survival. Frustration claws at him. He curses his inability to replicate the high-level techniques of veterans like Togang and Ori while pinned in this defensive posture. Determined to follow his own tutorial strategy, he grins behind his mask and draws his spiked baton to carve a path through the mass. He dashes through the dark, ruined streets without pause, driven by the need to locate the boss monster before the event escalates. Because the tutorial area features a fixed checkpoint where the boss respawns, he cuts through the horde, knowing this is the only way to trigger the encounter. Scanning the shadows, he searches for the creature's hiding spot as the looming threat of mutated monsters grows heavier. The effects of his shade grape begin to fade, compelling him to race toward a building within a 3-kilometer radius that he identifies as the likely spawn point. He maneuvers through the gauntlet of the undead and patrolling riot police, narrowly evading their strikes as he pushes toward his destination. As his vision blurs from the expiring effect, he slides into cover to catch his breath, deciding to reach the roof to observe the boss's emergence. He quickly examines his supplies, preparing to identify the specific type of enhanced zombie to formulate his next strike. Suddenly, a girl wielding a chainsaw appears, and Song-ho stares in shock at the sight of Mi-kyung standing there. He expresses disbelief that the gym members survived this long, and Mi-kyung confirms their safety while questioning why he ventured so far. Defensively, he insists he only followed his manual, while Mi-kyung explains that Lee Kyung-hoon forced the party members to stay together. She details how the zombies ambushed them, scattering the survivors until they were driven back to the starting location. Irritated by the deteriorating situation, he tells her to listen closely, preparing to address the mounting trouble. He keeps his awakened status hidden, masking his shock as the game's reality grows increasingly treacherous. Mi-kyung explains that an outside party forced her into this dangerous position, making her realize just how grave their situation has become. Song-ho recalls his old game data, noting that slaying the boss will collapse the zombie wall and reset their aggression, effectively ending the tutorial. He warns her to stay alert, telling her to watch for the enhanced zombie he expects to manifest at any second. Blue lightning suddenly crackles through the air as the creature appears, its head crowned with strange, jagged protrusions. He asks why she feels changes, warning that these monsters have a trait-sealing ability. Panic washes over Mi-kyung as her hand begins to glow red, confirming that the beast has successfully locked away her power. When he asks if she still trusts him, she affirms her loyalty, grateful for everything he has done to keep her alive. He instructs her to use the flare signals in her bag to draw the zombies away from the rooftop. With the plan set, he sprints headlong toward the horde, determined to eliminate the enhanced monster despite the extreme danger. A system notification abruptly flashes, informing him that his own traits are now sealed, forcing him to shift his tactics instantly. Realizing the monster's lower level only affects his base trait, he keeps his extra power active and draws his bow from his inventory to end the fight. Although defeating low-level grunts provides meager rewards, he readies his bow, knowing that efficiency is the only way to survive this orderly apocalypse. Scanning the ruins from his ledge, he is interrupted by a frantic shout, forcing him to draw his compound bow in sudden confusion. Mi-kyung sprints across the rooftop, waving a red flare to draw the horde toward her and effectively manipulating the event dungeon's mob AI. Seeing her successfully pull the aggro, he pushes forward into the gap she created, feeling a surge of strength as he prepares to exploit the chaos. After a quick calculation confirms his efforts are finally breaking even, he declares he will end the enhanced zombie with one decisive shot. A sudden movement reveals an ally leading the charge, striking the pale monster with a blade and forcing it to recoil in agony. Missing his chance for a clean kill in the murky darkness, he leaps down into the ruined cityscape to engage the boss monster directly. He slams the beast down, stating he will feel the hit with his own hands as he struggles to hold his shield. As the red aura surrounding the creature fades, the system lifts his trait seal and awards him 10 points, though he finds no skill drop among the remains. He quickly scans the immediate area, discovering a Roboton bracelet that grants an insight bonus, alongside 2 mysterious rubber bands. Mi-kyung catches up to him, explaining that she broke free from her seal just as he deduces that the tutorial clear reward has replaced the standard loot, granting him another 17 points. Watching his total points climb, he realizes these irregular gains result from the system's newly diversified reward mechanics. He offers a strap to Mi-kyung, who hesitates to accept it, feeling her contribution was far too minor to merit such a prize. Insisting she take the item, he emphasizes that the challenge only ended in victory because of her, then smiles and proposes they retreat to the gym. Arriving at the facility, they find the structure tilting dangerously, clearly compromised by shoddy construction that makes it a death trap. He urges them to relocate immediately, and she agrees to warn the director about the imminent danger of a structural collapse. Before they settle in, he decides that once the entire group is assembled, he must address the looming threat of the killer system. Reuniting with Young-jun, he feels a wave of relief seeing the director is still human and suggests they head inside to find Yoo-hyun. Young-jun stares in disbelief when he learns Sung-ho defeated a boss capable of sealing traits. but Sung-ho brushes the feat off as a minor skirmish. He credits the opening for his duel to Mi-kyung's perfect distraction, earning him quiet admiration for his tactical nerve. When questioned about their own rewards, Hyung-jun reveals they received only an ebony club, having encountered no checkpoints amidst the endless waves of undead. Pondering whether difficulty scales with level, Se-hung-ha asks if they earn points through any means other than direct combat. Hyun-jun confirms his tally rose after he physically rescued Yoo-hyun from zombie, prompting Sang-hoon-ho to consider the potential for hidden point-earning mechanics. This revelation suggests that simply escaping mobs or assisting others now grants points, making it easier for non-combatants to level up in this new system. The atmosphere in the gym shifts instantly when a companion demands to know his trait, refusing to let him play dumb after the system integration finally forces their hands. He reflects that his own early awakening was likely a pre-registration reward, whereas the system is only now activating for everyone else who managed to survive the tutorial. The chilling realization that the rules of this orderly apocalypse can shift at any moment leaves him struggling to breathe, as his once absolute game knowledge begins to falter. He watches Mi-kyung, wondering how she feels about actually obtaining an item during the tutorial, a rare stroke of luck that sets her apart from the others who walked away empty-handed. The group begins to share their various abilities, with one member boasting a physical enhancement while another explains their newfound power to control dolls. He considers revealing his true trait to shed his web of lies, but he hesitates, fearing his allies might harbor deep-seated resentment or jealousy if they knew the truth. Instead, he decides to play it safe, claiming he awakened an attack prediction ability that allows him to see monster attack routes as clear after images. Focusing on the path ahead, he plans to prioritize leveling up while waiting for the rest of the party to arrive before they coordinate their next move. He remains obsessed with accessing the shop and auction house, silently vowing to finally crush the bastards from the hillside villa who once dared to threaten Mi-kyung. He reflects that giving the group that info was definitely worth it. Without warning, a companion cuts through the silence, casually prying into Sung-ho's level as if it were a trivial matter. This persistent individual adds that such an efficient tutorial clear only makes sense if Sung-ho has been hunting since the very start. To deflect, he places a paper frog on the table to demonstrate the mechanics of level gaps and respawns, but a sudden scuffle breaks out. Forced to watch, he sees his allies intervene to guard his secret, with one man ruthlessly choking the interrogator into silence. Mi-kyung quickly pivots the conversation by claiming to be level 2, a fabrication that leaves Sung-ho wondering if they are merely coddling him. Realizing they have rendered the boy unconscious just to bury the truth, he watches the victim struggle through the aftermath of the assault. The air grows thick with unease, and as he turns to make his exit, a firm hand stops him in his tracks. They press plastic binoculars and extra snacks into his hands. Gifts he accepts with genuine thanks for their continued support. Hyung-jun sighs, deciding that a dose of vulnerability is the only way to break the mounting tension. He confesses that his marriage fell apart because he valued his gains over his wife, obsessed with muscle loss while neglecting his home. Placing a hand on Sung-ho's shoulder, he notes that everyone has skeletons they prefer to leave in the dark, encouraging him to open up only when he is ready. It becomes clear to Sang-hong that both Hyung-jun and Mi-kyung see through his facade, yet he steels himself to head toward his next objective. Hyung-jun grips his wrist for a final earnest request, reminding him that the level gap will eventually vanish and urging him to stay alive until they can reunite. With a final nod and a promise to check in, Sung-ho walks away, leaving the group behind, genuinely struck by their fierce loyalty. Stepping out into the biting chill, Sung-ho breathes heavily, frustrated by the heat of reality clashing with the sudden, inexplicable snowfall in the other world. He clears the white powder with a shovel, muttering about the absurd weather before deciding to rest, silently promising a proper funeral for the deceased. Activating his absolute will skill to boost his stats for 30 minutes, he feels a surge of relief that his stockpiled supplies remain safe in the warehouse as he eyes a mysterious cave nearby. Mi-kyung expresses deep hesitation about the mission, but Sung-ho realizes the heavy snow actually reinforces his defenses, acting as a natural barrier to keep local goblins at bay. Abandoning his plan to dig a moat because the frozen ground has become impenetrable, he retreats to his base to organize his current intel and map out his next moves. He recalls the core mechanics of survival life, where players once balanced 5 items and 10 skills to survive, yet he knows the game's old rules do not fully apply to this new reality. In the game, exceeding skill limits force the oldest ability to be replaced, requiring players to optimize their combinations to survive. Now, he must do the same in a world where variables are far more unpredictable. Sung-ho realizes a stealth patch occurred during his week offline, and with zombies swarming everywhere, he knows he must adapt to this harsh new status quo. Sticking to the basics, he resolves to stock up, acquire better gear, and grind steadily, pulling on his tactical gloves to begin the work. His short-term plan is to finish the perimeter and hunt the owlbear. While in the real world, he must farm festival fireworks and monitor the hillside villa gang. Though the sheer volume of tasks leaves him feeling overwhelmed, he hesitates, struggling to silence the overwhelming anxiety clouding his thoughts. Entering the room, he focuses solely on reaching Gwangali to farm fireworks at midnight while the zombies sleep. He surveys his weapon rack in disbelief, realizing the sheer scale of the preparation required. Across town, a group mocks a subordinate for failing to handle a jerrycan. While the man insists he is a strategist, not manual labor, an argument erupts comparing him to the late Owen Hawk, until a woman grabs the man in the blue cap to de-escalate. They discuss Sung-ho, concluding they must eliminate him immediately because he survived and awakened. Watching from the shadows, he realizes they are still obsessed with hunting him. He spots a man preparing a Molotov cocktail to torch his hideout and decides he cannot let this slide. Stepping out from behind a wall, he catches the group completely off guard. He tells them he is heading to Gwangali for fireworks, explaining that zombies are diurnal and sleep at midnight. Mocking their ignorance, he points out their failure to realize that keepers and creepers only spawn for players level 7 or higher. Since he is only level 5, he knows he is safe from those entities, a fact that leaves the thugs stunned. He smiles, questioning the validity of the intel before declaring he will raid their hideout instead. The thugs react with shock and outrage at his sudden, insane declaration. The group draws their clubs to defend themselves just as a creature lunges from the shadows. He pursues a fleeing figure through the darkness. But a sudden searing pain forces him to recoil as the shadows shift. Without warning, an assailant drops from above with a blade drawn, barking orders for his partner to strike first. Fueled by the sting of being mocked for his trait, Sung-ho lunges forward, desperate to finally seize his attacker. He vows to claim that power for himself, stepping past the groaning man left bleeding in the street. Watching a monster tear into a nearby bystander, Sung-ho calls out that he will provide answers once the carnage ends. Two survivors attempt to flee in different directions, but the girl's scream pierces the air as a skeleton rises to block her path. A ring slams into him, sending Sung-ho spiraling from the sky. A pale, muscular beast pounces, forcing him to parry with his blade as he refuses to succumb to this death. The monster strikes his back, pinning him as he curses his pathetic end. Meanwhile, a man settles in for a nap while waiting to reach his destination, oblivious to the creature feasting on his victim nearby. Sung-ho notes they walked into his trap and fires, saying they handed him a free hit. He unleashes the magically charged projectile, debating whether he should deliver the final blow himself. Frustration boils over when the creature merely staggers instead of collapsing, still standing despite the direct hit. Sung-ho realizes his projected bullet trajectory is off as the creature lunges, its heavy claws gouging the concrete. The energy beams strike and tear through the monster's purple hide. He continues firing until the threat finally collapses, standing over the severed head with a heavy, uneasy heart. Reflecting on the moral weight of the kill, he mutters for his enemy to let go of his resentment while dragging the corpse into the shadows. He walks away from the alley, dismissing the death as mere trash-tricking trash in this orderly apocalypse. His morning farming routine proceeds smoothly, beginning with a thorough sweep of the abandoned hideout for valuable auction goods. He wonders if the man would have succumbed naturally, noting the stockpile of alcohol and cigarettes with detached curiosity. At Gwangali, he secures the festival fireworks he needs, though he is distracted by the discovery of an absurdly large, mutated onion. A nearby observer watches in horror, realizing Sung-ho is more dangerous than the monsters, while Dingo twitches his ears to track incoming threats. With his companion's help, he systematically clears sleeping zombies and creeps through the ruins, steadily pushing his stats to level 14. By 7 a.m., the farming is done, but he finds others collapsed in a pool of dark, mysterious liquid. He opens a portal, complaining that he wishes the other world weren't winter. He maps a route to Suyeon, the shelter, and Kyungjun's base, but is interrupted by an explosion. The blast debris settles as a sudden typhoon brings torrential rain, forcing Sung-ho to shelter behind his reinforced wooden door. With the real world battered by the storm for 2 days, he spends the downtime operating his mini excavator to carve out a deeper defensive moat. He avoids the freezing otherworld entirely, waiting for the inevitable thaw to finish the construction work. The physical exertion is grueling, and he vows never to repeat such backbreaking labor as he feels an immense sense of relief when the ice walls finally melt. Stepping outside, he feels glad the harsh weather has passed. though he remains vigilant, channeling his energy as the winds howl around him. A tornado lifts people into the air, but as others remain trapped, Song-ho prepares to push forward. He treks through the sodden forest until he finds Dingdo waiting for him. Observing the environment, he notes that firearms are overpowered in the game, though they only unlock after the Iron Death disease and require significant farming to obtain. Song-ho praises Dingo for finding the perfect spot, while a creature watches fish in the river. Dingo growls a warning as Se-hong checks his watch, which has boosted his insight to 14, while his level 2 terrain sense sharpens his perception of the beast. Hiding in the dense brush, he watches the owlbear hunt, confident that the creature cannot detect his presence. With only 15 bullets remaining, he readies his rifle, calculating that it will take 7 precise shots to bring the monster down. Knowing ammunition is impossible to restock, he prioritizes efficiency, aiming his barrel and firing a shot that strikes the creature squarely in the head. Song-ho asks what the creature is staring at as he dashes through the forest. He strikes the creature with projectiles from above, calculating its movements to exploit every blind spot. The monster screeches in agony as green blood sprays the forest floor, leaving him stunned by its raw power. Aiming his rifle while suspended midair, he decides that today is the day he finally ends this encounter. He taunts the beast as an owl freak, provoking it to lunge forward in a desperate, aggressive attack. As the monster slams its claws into the earth, he smiles, preparing to use a magical artifact. He ignites a bomb and swings his weapon, drawing the creature toward his orb. Blocking the beast's fierce retaliation with a shield, he counters with an energy-infused punch. A golden explosion engulfs the forest, and as the creature clutches its face, he realizes its biology is weak to light. He taunts the higher species for its vulnerability, but then pauses as a sudden, unexpected realization strikes him. Surrounded by an energy pillar, the beast demands he leave its valley. Song-ho delivers a final strike, silencing the monster and receiving a system notification that he has reached level 15 and gained 25 points. The system awards him the silent movement skill, which reduces his noise output to help him survive more efficiently. He harvests materials from the carcass to fill his inventory, though he finds the new dimensional slop trait somewhat underwhelming. Determined to maximize his resources before the D-Day event, he decides to milk every possible advantage from the remains. He carves up the fallen monster with his chainsaw, harvesting every bit of material available for the days ahead. Afterward, he shares a meal with Dingo, savoring the taste because life in this orderly apocalypse is defined by such small, necessary pleasures. When he scolds his companion for an endless appetite, the wolf simply catches another fish to grow stronger. Preparing for the hunts they will eventually face together, Song-ho smiles at Dingo's progress, deciding it is finally time to move on now that they have hit level 15 and unlocked the auction house. He identifies the portal as the auction house, shocked that it mirrors the game's shop. With a flash of irritation, he notes the transaction fee is 10% double what it was in the game, and dismisses the blatant ripoff with a grunt. He interacts with the menu to browse, only to freeze when he spots an old ebony club already listed for auction. Forcing himself to stay calm, he wonders if a high-level combatant has arrived in this world and prepares to investigate the seller. Scanning the auction comments, he recognizes the specific writing style and feels a confident smile tug at his lips. In the game, players relied on anonymity, using customized avatars and voices to shield their true identities from one another. He reflects on how veteran players disregard the game's intended path, especially the one who keeps adding excess to their status updates. A notification pings as Rabbit Princess reaches out, introducing herself through the interface. Song-ho notes her direct personality and identifies himself as Ginbop Lover. He monitors the chat, growing anxious as the reply delay makes him suspect her intentions. A sudden notification arrives, with Rabbit Princess expressing a sense of betrayal and demanding to know how long he's been keeping her waiting. Song-ho feels understood, while she offers to reveal her own trait to build trust. Confirming they will be moving together, she admits her trait is Resurrection, which she can use infinitely as long as she has points. Stunned, he reveals his level as 17 and shows his status window, including his newly activated Absolute Will skill. When she asks for his trait, he hesitates, admitting deep-seated trust issues that prevent him from sharing his abilities even with close acquaintances. Rabbit Princess expresses empathy and urges him to check the auction house, prompting him to register for an item. He finds a magic metal ring that boosts stats, which she offers him for only 10 points. Shocked by her generosity, he listens as she explains that she wants to prove her sincerity. He recalls their early days as veterans where they fought monsters together. Yet he remains surprised by this unexpected display of goodwill. Despite the absurdity of the situation, Song-ho feels a rare sense of relief at having reconnected with a trusted ally. To demonstrate his own sincerity, He lists an owlbear claw and smoked trout on the market, treating the apocalypse like a calculated game system. Rabbit Princess expresses shock at the high quality of his goods, having long admired his expertise with both rare weapons and snacks. When she asks about monsters in Busan, he attributes his success to his unique trait and offers the items as a tangible token of his trust. He insists she wears sensible clothes in reality and drop her signature excess catchphrase to avoid drawing unwanted attention, forcing her to reluctantly switch to Jayus. After ending the conversation, he finally sits down to a proper meal, savoring the grilled fish as the typhoon outside mysteriously clears. Far away, a man sits in the dark with his tattoo equipment, his eyes burning with a resolve to make his enemy pay for past transgressions. He wonders if his friend has finally ascended to godhood, watching in shock as a figure in diving gear approaches him through the gloom. Sokyeon leaps down with a powerful impact, pinning a zombie to the ground. He brutalizes the undead to clear his path, driven by an urgent need to reach the friend who once provided him with long-lost warmth. He swings at his foes, then frantically carries survivors to safety as the area is destroyed. An explosion rocks the city, and Sung-ho confronts an intruder in his hideout, asking how they got in. 3 days have passed since the typhoon subsided, leaving zombies to roam the streets like mindless mobs in a game. The gym party continues to adapt to this orderly apocalypse, with Yuyan reaching level 5 and sending paper dolls further to scout, before reporting that the group relocated to a nearby taekwondo studio. Kyun-gun and Bora have become a couple, while Hyun-jun reaches level 10 and stands visibly shocked after unlocking his own shop interface. Sung-ho directs their growth by funneling them toward pre-prepared locations for safe farming, playing the part of a veteran manager overseeing his party's progression. He keeps a constant eye on the auction house and maintains contact with his ally, though he finds her sluggish response time increasingly frustrating. Punching his way through every obstacle, he remains driven by his goal to reach Busan while tracking his experience scaling. He knows that from level 15, the requirements to level up double. He admits he would hunt more, but he has too many other things to deal with right now. 2 hours later, he examines a mithril knife, bewildered that the beetle creatures managed to craft such a high-quality item on their own. He confronts the small insects on his table, ignoring a mysterious warning that he alone holds the power to stop the end, a secret he decides to keep buried for now. Challenging the beetles to prove their true crafting potential, he offers them a gold coin, remaining skeptical that such simple creatures could truly master such a complex craft. The lead beetle bites into the coin and, to his genuine surprise, presents a perfectly functional knife, proving that his unconventional methods are yielding results. The protagonist examines the small blade, questioning why his mithril knife remains so unevenly crafted. He notices the small beetles crying in distress as an injured survivor stumbles toward the infirmary, desperate for help. Deciding to listen to the survivor's proposal, he treats their interaction as a formal contract between players in this game-like reality. The small creature explains that constant goblin attacks prevented them from crafting proper weapons, forcing them to endure relentless beatings. Sung-ho demands the location of the goblin nest, intent on wiping out the threat to secure the area. After the beetle points to the nest on the map, he promises to destroy it soon to clear the path. He explains that they must both contribute to their mutual survival, establishing a cooperative pact. The creature agrees to dispose of bodies in exchange for resources, while he urges them to focus on the immediate task. Seeing their potential as leaders, he commits to a friendly relationship with the beetles. He continues his daily routine of farming with Dingo, dragging heavy supplies through portals to prepare for future threats. Driven to kill his enemies, he faces evolved zombies that are far stronger than the early game mobs. Sung-ho charges through the streets, swinging his weapon to cut down the monsters with practiced ease. He slams his weapon into the pavement, creating a crater as he clears the street of hostile entities. The Ebony Club begins to degrade, marked by an old tag, while he ruthlessly beats back a purple-skinned creature. He decapitates the beast with a blade, ignoring the roar of the remaining zombies. Remaining vigilant, he clenches his fist as he prepares for the next confrontation, killing the creatures instinctively. He pushes forward toward his destination, Eden Villa. A jolt of shock runs through him as the reality of his arrival hits him. Standing before the daunting structure, Sung-ho studies Eden Villa, a place he would never have set foot in if not for the world's collapse. He worries for Suyan, though he recalls that those who have made contact with an awakened are immune to the spores, offering him a sliver of hope for her survival. Evidence of her presence soon appears, confirming that she has managed to avoid the infection. Yet he remains wary of the villa's location, situated precariously between the government's time shelter and the bunker of his late rival, Kwon Kyung-jun. Anticipating that this proximity will inevitably trigger a violent clash, he approaches the elevator shaft with extreme caution. With a gesture, he signals Dingo to follow, and together they scale a rope into the structure to bypass the blocked main entrance. The climb leaves him gasping for air, a physical toll he notes would have utterly broken an ordinary person. Peering over the ledge, he spots clear signs of Soo-yeon's recent activity near Unit 302. He raps his knuckles against the door, calling out with a hint of annoyance for being scolded despite his punctuality. Soo-yeon cracks the door, hissing for him to stay silent because a killer is prowling nearby, before her eyes widen in recognition. A small smile forms on his face as he reminds her that he has come to collect the payment for his medical supplies. She retorts by questioning his odd behavior, pointing out that he is hardly a typical student, which leaves him reflecting on the absurdity of his own life. Before he can respond, she cuts him off, her voice dropping to a whisper as she repeats the grave warning about a murderer on the loose. She gestures for him to hurry inside, making it clear that a long, grave discussion is waiting for them. Once they are settled, she begins pouring out everything she has witnessed, her words flowing with such intensity that he barely finds a gap to speak. He listens in silence, struggling to process the rapid-fire summary of all she has endured. She explains that the shelter currently houses 3 distinct, fragile factions, each wary of the other's intentions. Their uneasy peace dissolves when the Sea Party, a group of over 10 men, steps out from the shadows to seize absolute control. They demand the time shelter be opened immediately, using the pretext of dividing supplies to consolidate resources for their own rapid expansion. When the other factions refuse to comply, a ruthless murderer emerges from their ranks, impaling victims to force total submission through raw terror. Song-ho recognizes the leader as Kwon, noting how the subordinates move with a disturbing mechanical focus that reeks of coercion. The killer acts like a brainwashed puppet, but because Kwon initiated the deal himself, Song-ho suspects his mind control trait comes with a significant weakness. He keeps this observation to himself, shielding Soo-yeon from the dangerous crossfire of the Sea Party's aggressive campaign. While both the B team and his own allies have suffered a string of inexplicable murders, the Sea Party remains suspiciously untouched, which begs the question of why they are so desperate to breach the vault. He turns his attention to Soo-yeon, confirming that her role as a support type awakened earns her points through healing rather than through the grind of combat. It becomes clear that Kwon is not a fighter himself, but a parasitic leader who forces others to harvest materials to fuel his own advancement. Soo-yeon nods in agreement, realizing that the rising strength of the Sea Party's members does not necessarily translate to the leader's own personal power. Dingo watches them from the corner, sensing the heavy, hidden burdens that come with managing such a volatile and unstable clan. She shifts the conversation to his future plans, though she pauses to admit that one of her own teammates is likely about to make a desperate confession. Soo-yeon laments that her group is plagued by fools blinded by lust, which explains why she was so sharp and irritable when they first met. Despite their failures, she insists they are not inherently evil and asks what his next move will be in this mounting crisis. Bandaging an unconscious survivor, he outlines his intent to infiltrate the time shelter and extract crucial intelligence. When she questions the peril of confronting Team C, he waves off her concerns, noting that constant zombie incursions keep their enemies too occupied to consolidate power. As Dingo tilts his head, he presents a glowing yellow gem as a housewarming gift, suggesting it can serve as a makeshift candle or be divided if the light proves too intense. She realizes he has unlocked the shop, prompting him to reassure her that he will settle his medical debt with interest once his objectives are met. With a confident smile, he prepares to depart for his mission, his loyal wolf already waiting by his side. Elsewhere, a subordinate informs their leader of another B-team murder, noting that the cleanup of the sector will be complete as they seize the remaining supplies. Receiving no word from Team A, the leader commands the execution of another member to keep their operation running smoothly. The subordinate reports that tracking is hampered because the targets are scattering, though they have caught sight of a female member moving toward Eden Plaza. The leader activates his ability and orders the killer to intercept her. When the subordinate bows to apologize for failing to confirm their primary target's identity, the leader erupts in a fit of rage. Gripping his desk, he remains obsessed with hunting down the man hiding in Busan before he evolves into an unstoppable threat. While his men battle zombies, he receives a system notification granting him the sense of smell, though he seethes at the fact that he earns no experience from his underlings' kills. The flaw in his trait gnaws at him. Fueled by the terror that the man who used paralysis poison against him before the collapse will eventually consume his power, he fears that failing to reach the level 15 milestone before the upcoming auction summit will cost him the respect of other regional leaders. Finally, he orders his men to initiate a cleanup of a captured zombie, signaling the start of a blaze with a thrown bottle. He watches the fire consume the restrained zombies, tossing a lit Molotov cocktail into their midst to ensure their total incineration. Watching the flames dance, Kyung-jun notes he still requires 6 more levels before he is fully prepared for his ultimate objective. He gathers his subordinates, stepping forward to announce 3 critical tasks they must complete immediately. His eyes glow with supernatural power as he orders them to locate the time shelter's lock mechanism first. Laughing at the simplicity of the task, he instructs his team to continue capturing zombies to fuel their plans. For his third command, he demands they track down his unknown rival, and his men quickly bow to acknowledge the order. One subordinate approaches a blue portal, unaware that Sung-ho is watching, while Kyung-jun speaks as if he is ready to answer the man's questions. Observing Sung-ho from afar in the forest, he warns him not to act with such impatience. He prepares a wire for a stealthy strike, convinced that his target will eventually come to him voluntarily because Soo-yeon will feel compelled to protect that person. Nearby, a man calls out to Soo-yeon, preparing to reiterate information he believes she already understands. He kneels in the ruins to offer a red rose, but she wonders if this is truly the time for romance while a killer stalks their group. Though he insists his clairvoyance has verified their safety, she remains skeptical, reminding him that a teammate recently died while farming. He claims the killer is trapped in the B party's area, but as he tries to force her to listen, she remains frustrated by his lack of concrete confirmation. She walks away, rejecting his persistent confession, even as he demands one last chance to speak his mind. Suddenly, he grips his chest in agony as his heart pulses, and she scolds him because that sensation is the definitive signal that a killer is lurking nearby. She stumbles backward, realizing their intelligence was dead wrong, and urges everyone to scatter from the plaza before they trigger a deathmatch against a killer capable of tracking their life force. Sung-ho attempts to pinpoint the source of the threat using his ocular ability, but his confidence shatters when he discovers the assailant is already standing directly in their path. Dressed in a suit identical to those worn by the C-Team, the antagonist advances with a blade drawn, transforming the desolate ruins into a theater for their final confrontation. She vents her frustration at their abysmal luck, apologizing for the oversight while confirming that their stalker is undeniably an agent of the C-Team. The attacker triggers a death field, trapping the survivors inside the energy dome. Trapped within the red barrier, the group realizes that flight is no longer an option, as the rigid rules of the deathmatch prevent even the murderer from retreating. He signals for Dingo to stay silent, then readies an anti-iron death flashlight, a plastic-cased device with a ceramic circuit board specifically engineered to blind such threats. While they hope for the secret savior, the attacker lunges, telling them to hold on. The device works, emitting a beam that disrupts the assailant as he continues his attack. The attacker crashes into the ground with a powerful shockwave, sneering at the wounded woman for her pathetic display of weakness. She gasps in horror at his mention of the Demon King, realizing too late that her moment of celebration left her completely exposed. Looming over her with a blade, the man watches her tremble, his cold demeanor offering no mercy to her frantic pleas. He remarks that she remains as foolish as ever, while Sehong dashes forward, quietly reflecting on his past decision to reject her romantic confession. As he rushes past the injured woman, the assailant laments the fleeting nature of life, unaware that he is already facing his own end. Terrified by the figure, the woman is saved when Sang-hom steps in to block the strike. Griping his kitchen knife, he ignores his opponent's shock and delivers a powerful swing, slamming a blast of energy into the man. The enemy dodges with a pained grunt, leaving the woman behind as Sung-ho reaches out to help her, insisting that now is not the time to die. She stares in surprise as he confirms that Soo-yeon was right. The C-Team leader uses a psychic trait to brainwash his subordinates into killers. Noting her rapidly healing wounds, he admits her survival is thanks to her group acting as bait, and though she mourns their fallen comrade, he urges her to move on. He explains that killing a foe with such high regeneration is impossible, but he intends to exploit a bug in the deathmatch system where zombies swarm and block the exit. Leading her toward the sky bridge, he prepares to strike when the killer's excitement peaks and the structural thud echoes, mirroring the chaos of the initial deployment. As the energy dome constricts, a fissure appears, signaling the death field's collapse. Sung-ho warns that they have only one fleeting chance to escape, commanding her to wait for his signal before crossing the bridge. He directs Soo-yeon to the third floor to safeguard their plans from any unforeseen system glitches, while he stands his ground on the first. His heart thuds against his ribs as he sweeps the dark room with his flashlight, instantly catching the faint shimmer of an intruder's presence. Launching himself forward, he shatters the concrete wall to intercept the assassin, who reveals a sudden, unnatural ability to phase through solid matter. With eyes burning a malevolent red, the killer vows to exact vengeance, forcing Sung-ho to dig his heels into the shifting, unstable debris. He narrowly twists away from a lethal blade, immediately pivoting into a high-speed strike that sends his assailant stumbling backward, ignoring the grievous damage he has sustained. The fanatic continues his advance with a hollow, mechanical gait, as if his wounds carry no weight. Sung-ho realizes the man's predictable combat patterns confirm he is merely a mind-controlled puppet. Yet the danger escalates as he grows stronger with every surge of adrenaline. He contemplates seizing the power of the dungeon master, questioning if killing his current opponent is the most efficient path forward. Narrowly dodging a lethal strike, he maneuvers his position to increase the chances of indirectly killing Kwon Kyung-jun. Determined to stick to his plan, he prepares to defend himself with a kitchen knife, lunging forward as he unleashes his killing intent to confront the threat. Noticing the opponent's excitement state is nearing its peak, he is surprised when the man launches a sudden attack with significantly increased speed. They clash in the air and he realizes his enemy is using an agility buff. To counter this, he activates his Slop 1 skill and deploys a defensive shield, deciding that buying time is his best option. Meanwhile, Mi-kyung rushes up a spiral staircase, shouting in distress as she watches the barrier shrink while zombies construct walls to close them in. He instructs her to keep watch outside until he gives the signal, choosing to stay behind on the second floor to stall his opponent. A mysterious figure approaches, but he notices the dark aura has faded, leaving only the opponent's peak excitement state to contend with. Channeling intense red energy into his movements, he struggles to hold on for a few more seconds to execute his final plan. He grits his teeth against the heavy, forceful impacts of the assault, pushing his body to the limit as he waits for the perfect moment. The attacker slams a hand onto Sung-ho's head, his body surging with a dark, Stage 3 excitement aura. Sung-ho calls out for Soo-yeon to act, leveraging his gamer's mind and body traits to endure the onslaught. He lunges forward, narrowly dashing away from the lethal red grid of the shrinking death field. Leaping across a wide structural gap, he clears the barrier while the panicked crowd remains trapped behind the glowing energy wall. Amidst the ruins, the woman flees the zombies as a character in a purple shirt launches a desperate strike against his opponent. Shadowy hands repel the surrounding crowd, and the woman gasps in relief as she successfully slips outside the death field. Shouting for her to hurry, Sung-ho leaps down with his shield, shattering the concrete floor under the force of his landing. He dodges the red hand, shocked that his opponent can phase through the ceiling. The mysterious figure suggests a ceasefire, only to immediately unleash a ferocious red energy attack. Claiming he is untraceable, the attacker laughs until Sung-ho levels his handgun at him, telling him to sleep for a few minutes so he can wake up to a different reality. Gunfire rings out as the crowd is crushed, prompting Sung-ho to open a dimensional gate and quickly seal it behind him. He releases a final burst of energy to shove the mob away, leaving the woman shocked by his ability to breach the zombie wall. Sung-ho grabs her hand, pulling her toward the exit before the undead can swarm their position. They know that once the death field dissipates, the surrounding horde will descend, making their survival dependent on constant movement. He leads her toward the time shelter, intending to force a confrontation between the killer and the C-team. Freed from the leader's mental influence, the killer joins their flight, turning the apocalypse into a shifting, unpredictable dungeon event. Sung-ho remembers that deathmatch rules strip away negative status effects, effectively snapping the killer out of the brainwashing. He smiles, resolving to eliminate the killer, secure the shelter, and dismantle the entire C-team through calculated brutality. The former puppet regains his senses, standing in a blood-soaked suit with a knife in his hand, his mind clouded by dark confusion. He grips the weapon tightly, questioning why a technician is present, while his clothes remain drenched in gore. Fragmented memories of his family surface through his pain, eventually sharpening into the face of his manipulator, Kwon Kyung-jun. Seeing the murder scene triggers a headache as he realizes he has been exploited. With his manipulator revealed, Dong-yoon gains a new stat point. Sung-ho lets out a roar of rage at being used as a puppet, his body trembling as a red aura flares around him. From a nearby rooftop, Sung-ho watches, feeling a surge of fury that while he suffered, his enemy was busy power leveling. He vows to make his opponent pay for every transgression, leaping from the heights to finally settle the blood debt. Crouching alongside his ally, Sung-ho observes the enemy camp, understanding his small but vital role in this deadly game. He triggers a display of fireworks to force the C-team into a defensive state, hoping to break their leader's grip on his pawn. Unaware that Sung-ho's trap is snapping shut, the leader remains in his chair, completely blind to the strategy closing in on him. Soo-yeon keeps watch for any remaining C-team members, while Sang-ho prepares to pinpoint the leader's exact location. The mysterious figure arrives right on cue, sprinting through the dark woods with a heart consumed by deep resentment. Song Ho readies his blade, disgusted by the leader's arrogance, even as he finds himself surrounded by the man and his bodyguards under a pulsing red energy. Magical force erupts as the fight begins, and Sang Hong narrowly avoids a powerful blast that sends him flying backward during the collision. The man on the ground watches in terror as Sang Ho suddenly appears before him, mocking his confusion about how he managed to track him down. After silencing a desperate threat to leave, Sang Hong brandishes a blood-stained knife and activates his death field skill. As the grid manifests, the attacker mocks his lack of awareness, saying his luck has run out. The leader collapses in shock while his opponent fights the bodyguards to survive. The boss orders a retreat, but an archer pins them inside the dome, leaving the leader questioning the trick. He wonders if Song Ho has broken free from his hypnosis, realizing that even reapplying his brainwashing trait might be futile now. With the death field already deployed to prevent escape, the leader decides to slaughter Song Ho to strip him of all his skills and experience points. He commands his men to pin their target down, but Song Ho dodges their strikes and fights back with lethal precision. Lashing out, Song Ho calls the bodyguards brainless idiots for continuing to serve as pawns without realizing their true position. In a flurry of violence, he strikes with a glowing blade, severing the arms of the two bodyguards as they fall to the ground. Covered in blood, the leader frantically screams for his men to attack, but the tide of the battle has already turned against him. Deflecting the incoming arrows with his blade, the suited man mocks the effort as useless and orders his subordinates to incinerate Song Ho with Molotov cocktails. He demands they contain the target, and his men obey as red energy surges through their bodies. Song Ho launches a sudden strike, but he is swiftly ambushed and stabbed by two of the men in suits. Smirking through the pain, Song Ho tells his opponent that failing to finish him earlier has sealed his fate, as the deathmatch rules now permanently lock them together, taunting him with a lit Molotov cocktail. The antagonist lunges forward, ready to burn his enemy alive. Song Ho hurls his own firebomb in response, and both men are instantly engulfed in a roar of flames. Though he stands defiant amidst the heat, the antagonist laughs, grinning as he watches the fire consume his target. Suddenly, a blade slashes across his face and an arrow pierces him, striking while he remains trapped within the inferno. Reacting sharply to a sudden movement nearby, he shouts into the darkness to identify the unknown intruder lurking in the shadows. A figure delivers a forceful kick to his chest, screaming a vengeful promise to tear the survivor apart the next time they cross paths. Afterward, Song Ho and his ally walk through the ruins, choosing to relocate to a new neighborhood near Gyeongjun to safeguard their remaining time. The survivor leans in, voicing her heartfelt gratitude to Song Ho for pulling her back from the brink. He nervously waves her off, his hands moving in a dismissive gesture to downplay his own heroism, reminding Soo-yeon that her own vigilance was the true key to their escape. He brushes aside her warnings about the encroaching zombies and the remnants of Team C. A small smile touches his lips as he signals for quiet, confident that the enemy's own chaotic actions will ultimately lead to their undoing. Following the fallout at the time shelter, he retreats for 3 days, hunched over his desk as his body remains battered and weary from the clash. He winces while adjusting his bandages, feeling the heavy physical toll of his survival. After hitting level 16 and banking 200 points, he spends 300 to secure an orichalcum long knife, a razor-sharp permanent blade, while unlocking the life-form tracking skill. The second day finds him collaborating with his mechanical beetles to patch up a damaged shield and plotting a series of goblin traps in the northwest to fortify his perimeter. By the third day, he is busy tending to his bull pepper garden, struck by how rapidly the crops mature within the unnatural soil of this otherworld forest. On the fourth morning, he reaches for his usual exchange of intel, only to find a paper airplane fluttering toward him with an erratic, unnatural trajectory. Unfolding the yellow document, his brow furrows as he reads the crude, biting provocation scrawled by Kyung-hoon. The sudden urge to retaliate flares up. Though he catches himself, realizing such violent impulses mirror the toxic mindset of the man he just killed. Forcing himself to breathe, he consciously strips away the heat of his emotions to approach the matter with the cold clarity of a tactician. He assesses the brewing power struggle between Kyung-hoon and Hyung-jun, noting how the former is aggressively moving to usurp the leadership role. Song Ho considers these reports of his allies secretly coordinating, deciding that their division offers the perfect excuse to expel them from his orbit. He knows he cannot abandon Soo-yeon forever, but for now, the goblin nest must be cleared to ensure his own progress remains uninterrupted. Suppressing his lingering emotions to follow a calculated path, he reaches out to activate his power, his focus narrowing entirely on the upcoming hunt. He calls for Dingo, his white wolf companion, to prepare for the engagement ahead. Observing how much the wolf has grown, he affectionately pets him before turning his attention toward the nearby goblin camp. The beetle creatures confirm the bounty details, reporting 3 hobgoblins and 18 regular goblins waiting in the nest. When a beetle expresses worry over the sheer number of enemies, he scoffs, reminding them that he is far from weak. In a sour mood, he draws his weapon, preparing to show them exactly how an expert wipes out a nest. He aims his firearm at the forest village, explaining that the strategy relies on a deafening blast to inflict status effects on the mob. A beam of light strikes the lead monster, followed by a swift spear thrust that claims the first goblin life. He and Dingo descend upon the group, hunting and slaying goblins as the survivors scream in panic. The wolf dashes through the trees and leaps from the rocks to maintain their coordinated assault. A piercing howl echoes through the forest, drawing the attention of 2 large, tusked monsters who roar in response. Because the aggro takes perfectly, he is able to reposition himself to strike the enemies from their flank. Swinging his blade and firing projectiles, he kills 2 goblins instantly as they stumble into the field. The 2 muscular monsters emerge, their eyes glowing red as they prepare to retaliate against the intruder. Dingo stands victoriously over the defeated goblins, his growls fading as the immediate threat dissipates. Song-ho notes the monsters are thinned out and weakened by status effects, deciding this is the ideal moment to test his new equipment. He readies his sword with a glowing blue cube at its tip and smiles in anticipation. Lunging forward, he executes a powerful downward strike to cleave through the remaining enemies. After inhaling a deep breath of smoke, he swings his blade in a blur of blue light, swiftly eliminating the pack and striking down the lead creature. He pokes at the fallen corpses, grumbling that the cleanup is always harder than the combat, while asking the beetle companions if they watched the display. A system window informs him he has gained 60 points, leaving him frustrated because he expected more than just points as a reward. Spotting a small flying monster, he pushes aside his disappointment to focus on the spoils of the raid. He organizes the captured creatures, including flame birds and poison toads, and decides to keep the wolf and birds in the shelter because they seem tame. Realizing Dingo's increased appetite makes the capture perfect, he secures new companions for Jodaki to ensure the raid's success. Adjusting his tactical vest, he smiles at the realization that despite his initial doubts, the total haul from this mission is huge. He walks toward a distant facility while pressing an ice pack to his head, complaining that the extreme heat is almost as intense as breaking news. Applying more ice to his hand, he observes the reality has become just as weird as the game, though with one major difference. Unlike in the game, zombies do not respawn, leading him to stand in thought as he forms a new hypothesis. He concludes that regular and enhanced zombies are not summoned artificially unless specific conditions are triggered. These include the appearance of creepers and keepers before dawn, or the specific spawns from the tutorial, though he pauses as he senses something new. He stares intently, wondering if building a shelter in an isolated zombie-free location would truly exempt him from the game's forced zombie waves. Considering how the patch notes from his week offline might have shifted event rewards, he plans a speedrun to secure a first kill bonus. These possibilities occupy his mind as he reaches the rice processing complex, where he intends to secure grain and feed supplies via the portal. He decides to inform Hyungjun of this location later, then adjusts his gear and uses his eyes of truth to identify a cursed sword, a unique item that consumes the weak-willed. The next morning, he maintains his physical routine, knowing that discipline training is essential for survival in this orderly apocalypse. He focuses on 3 daily priorities, starting with communicating with Yoo-hyun, who revealed in a note that Soo-hyun is moving to the real office style. Second, he scouts the otherworld forest with Dingo, and the 2 celebrate a successful trap by preparing a meal of boiled pork. Third, he checks the auction house, only to be surprised by users cluttering the interface with chat room advertisements to bypass the lack of direct messaging. As he eats, he laments the lack of established communication codes with Rabbit Gungju, which makes connecting in this chaotic environment difficult. He rests while Dingo finishes his meal, calculating the number of active auction house users and suspecting that some traffic might be artificially inflated. To test the market without exposing his trades, he lists an ice pack for 5 points, betting that the current heat wave will drive demand. He crosses his arms and waits, watching the interface for a notification that his item has been processed. A notification chimes, revealing a bag of natural ice listed within his system inventory window. He watches the vitriol in the chat, dismissing the commenters as broke losers, while maintaining his facade of frustration over the market's greed, firing back at the insults. He vents his annoyance at the effort required to drill lake ice and cut it with a wire saw just to survive the heat. Just as he moves to pull the listing, a chime sounds, and he receives an immediate notification that the ice pack has been sold. The system confirms a gain of 4.5 points, leaving him stunned and wondering which mysterious customer just made the purchase. Elsewhere, a woman in a red dress sits on an ornate chair, pressing the glowing bag of ice against her neck to find relief from the stifling heat. In the chat, a buyer mocks the onlookers for their obsession over points, while he shifts his attention to his next objective. He activates the zombie domination skill, causing the woman in the red dress to watch as her surrounding horde of zombies begin to growl in response to his influence. The skill takes hold, and as he carves through enemies with swift, glowing strikes, the system floods his interface with a rapid series of point rewards. He gazes out at the ruins, questioning why others struggle to survive when earning points through combat is so straightforward. The woman in red stares at the now-melted water in her hand, wondering if the mysterious seller who orchestrated this stunt possesses ice or creation-type powers. Watching the water drip, she wonders if she should exploit the other players to secure her own dominance. Opening her interface, she broadcasts a message to the public channel under the handle Pake. The user demands the ice seller's location, refusing to stop until an answer is provided. Feeling the strain of the heat, Song-ho lists another pack, keeping his identity masked while the chat erupts into a debate over his legitimacy. He observes the growing hysteria, resolute in his choice to remain independent rather than joining a base. Knowing the rules of this reality are far more volatile than any game. Recognizing the aggressive duck from the chat, he warns everyone to log off, realizing he is dealing with a dangerous psychopath. He taunts the bully for their cowardice, mocking the reality that they only back down when faced with true power. Tensions in the auction house reach a breaking point, forcing him to keep his true identity strictly guarded amidst the mounting confusion. When he agrees to list more ice but refuses to disclose his coordinates, the woman aggressively vows to hunt him down regardless. As he registers the next pack for 5 points, Rabba Gongju enters the chat, inadvertently triggering a chaotic clash of identities. He is caught off guard by her sudden appearance, while suspicious onlookers label her an imposter due to a slight error in her signature catchphrase. Her mention of a shared history signals her true identity to the woman in red, who experiences a sudden, sharp realization. She confronts him for his silence, while a mysterious woman with purple eyes watches from the shadows, a knowing smile playing on her lips. Duck confirms his location in the north, and Sang-ho muses on the possibility of a future offline meeting as he permanently upgrades his combat repertoire with dagger arts, Levi One Wine. With the auction house drama behind him, Sang-ho makes his way to the office hotel to assist Soo-yeon with her relocation. Scouting the urban ruins during the trek, he confirms that the tutorial's difficulty was likely lowered, as the number of survivors far exceeds his initial projections. He observes that zombies have ceased respawning throughout the downtown sector, suggesting it might be safer to remain in their current territory despite the encroaching lawlessness. Reaching the building, he catches a call from the rooftop where Mi-kyung, Soo-yeon, and Yoo-hyun are gathered, inviting him to share their meal. He approaches with a dark, intimidating scowl, and when the group asks what is wrong, he vows to take full responsibility for the situation unfolding before them. He confronts them directly because he knows Yoo-hyun's trade was upgraded to allow blinking with 2 people, yet they have conveniently hidden the fact that he is nursing a fresh wound. Yoo-hyun nervously tries to pass it off as a clumsy accent for moving boxes, but Sang-hong scoffs at the transparent lie. The group falls into a heavy, uncomfortable silence as Sun-ho gestures sharply toward the obvious, blood-soaked bandage on his ally's arm. Soo-yeon finally concedes that she treated a jagged puncture wound from a crossbow bolt, confirming to him that the injury was no mere accident. Sung-ho demands a full, immediate explanation for the ambush that took place just an hour prior. While they were transporting supplies, Yoo-hyun was waylaid by 3 individuals in hiking gear, and Mi-kyung insists the strike was a calculated, intentional attack. He views his allies as vital cogs in his plan. Yoo-hyun acts as his eyes and ears. Mi-kyung handles their mobility, and Soo-yeon provides the necessary medical support. Since he only knows the attackers are 3 people in hiking gear, he resolves to hunt them down before they become a persistent threat to his group's survival. As the party discusses the state of their alliance, Sung-ho and So-yeon realize that despite their outsider status, they have become integral members of the team. The mood shifts when they notice Hyung-jun is missing and discover that Kyung-hoon and Bo-ra have abandoned their guard duty, effectively violating the party's established rules. Confusion ripples through the room as the others admit they have no idea where the pair went or what they are planning. Upon checking his scouting doll, Sung-ho realizes Hyung-jun might be isolated and in danger, prompting him to ready a delivery for the base immediately. Discovering that all 3 individuals are currently gathered there, he decides the group must depart at once to investigate the situation. Sensing that a disaster is unfolding, He activates his physical enhancement traits, preparing the ground for an inevitable confrontation. He orders Mi-kyung to teleport them directly into the base to stop the violence, and as they materialize, the system extends the duration of his Void's Eye skill. The sudden appearance of Shang-ho leaves the gym members stunned and speechless. He commands Kyung-hoon to halt the conflict, but the man explodes in fury, branding him an intrusive outsider who has no right to interfere. When Kyung-hoon tells him to mind his own business, Song-ho threatens to end him, declaring that he and Soo-yeon will intervene by force if necessary. He demands they deactivate their physical enhancement traits so they can communicate like rational human beings rather than beasts. By explaining the harsh reality of the divine trial, he eventually forces them to stand down, as they finally accept that mutual destruction serves no purpose. Song-ho bristles at being treated like a subordinate, his frustration mounting as Oh Hyung-jun ignores his tactical input in favor of blindly following the crowd. He asserts that his strength is the only reason they remain alive. But Oh Hyung-jun counters that their loyalty belongs to the group's hierarchy, not to a rogue individual. When Oh Hyung-jun demands he take responsibility for his actions, Sang-ha scoffs at the absurdity of being managed like a company employee while the world burns. Because the apocalypse demands order, Oh Hyun-jun brands his unauthorized contact with outside parties a breach of protocol that justifies his immediate expulsion. Sung-ho looks to his companions for support, but the group falls into an uncomfortable silence. Paralyzed by the threat of being cast out, Mi-kyung steps forward to clarify that their recent actions, including hunting alongside outsiders, were calculated risks taken to infiltrate the auction and secure vital intel. He watches them struggle, finding it ironic that they question his methods despite his track record of keeping them safe. Mi-kyung defends his character, pointing out that unlike the others who demand payment, he has provided essential supplies and information without asking for anything in return. When the director attempts to equate him with dangerous strangers, Mi-kyung challenges the group to recall if those outsiders ever offered a single shred of actual help. As she cuts through the tension, the man in brown bows his head in apology, desperate to stop the director from lumping Song-ho in with nameless looters. He offers a sincere plea, insisting their motives were never selfish and urging everyone to move past the twisted logic currently fracturing the party. Oh Hyung-jun remains unmoved, asserting his authority by declaring that if they cannot align with his leadership, he is prepared to accept the consequences of their departure. He explains that this ultimatum isn't born of malice but a final attempt to part ways on decent terms, even offering to help them relocate if they choose to walk away. He admits he knows they only stayed because they feared losing access to supplies, a realization drawn from his time as their Jin director. Oh Hyung-jun nods, his initial shock giving way to a grudging acceptance of the terms, signaling that their shared path has finally come to an end. When he looks baffled by a parting remark, a companion scoffs at his density, though the moment reveals they were merely testing his resolve one last time. He admits his secret intention was to settle this dispute while Yu-yeon and Mi-kyung were away, and now he requests freedom of movement, hoping to cross paths with them again in the future. Excitement ripples through his companions at the prospect, and he tells them he needs only a few more weeks to observe how the situation develops, provided they remain nearby. He asks them to ensure Soo-yeon and Yoo-hyun eventually reach him after a short break, a task Mi-kyung readily agrees to handle. Relieved to see their spirits lifted, he presents them with a thick journal, but they recoil in visible terror the moment they grasp the weight of what he has handed them. He knows this reflects the nature of survival life, an unforgiving reality where a hellish catastrophe is always unfolding and the system remains inherently hostile to every player. The protagonist explains that the book is simply a record of his own experiences, a necessary guide because the system has warped reality by deleting established creatures and inserting new, deadly threats. While beasts like the ebony wood werewolf and the owlbear now prowl the world, he notes the fundamental flow remains unchanged, forcing him to focus his study on the nature of dimensional gates. These portals act as dens, dungeons, or labyrinths that serve as the essential hubs for monster summons and events, the very core mechanics the game requires to function. Once he confirms Soo-yeon has successfully joined the party, he turns his attention to the Goblin Den event that follows the animal raid, finding the entire process of its activation deeply twisted. He realizes the system triggers a goblin attack immediately after meat is secured, though the exact timing stays hidden, forcing him to rely on his own deductions, recalling that the first event truly began when zombies stopped walking naturally and started acting human after absorbing nutrients. He prepares for the shift. Concerned about Hyung-jun's group, he knows that unlike the sluggish undead, goblins actively hunt humans, making sturdy barricades vital for their survival. Determined to assist them personally, he starts his own intense preparations for the sequence of events he knows are coming next. Throughout the summer, he trains with various weapons to boost his stats, ensuring he is ready for every challenge ahead. His long-term use of paralysis poison finally yields results, increasing his raw strength and granting him the paralysis poison resistance level 2 skill. On the 10th day, a report arrives that a tiger has appeared, signaling the start of the apocalypse. The group speculates the beast likely escaped from a zoo, noting that the scarcity of other animals suggests many perished during the chaotic transition. While game footage always depicted animals being summoned, he observes that reality has adjusted the event, as no such summoning has been witnessed yet. When asked for their next move, he points out that Hyung-jun is the leader, though the others press him to take charge since he recruited most of them. Accepting the role, he outlines the plan. They will hunt animals for food, with Yu-yun and for 40 spickens, 40 on, providing the necessary rear support. Sung-ho warns the group to stay alert while surveying the ruins, signaling Hyung-jun to anchor the front line, who grins and accepts the heavy lifting. He tasks Mi-kyung with using Blink to link their lines. Despite her self-doubt, he insists her potential is clear, prompting her to commit to the effort. As he checks for input, the party remarks that these orders carry the weight of a true leader, leaving him to sheepishly plead that he has always done his best. Clarifying that the tiger is merely a distraction, he explains that their true objective hinges on locating the mysterious taffy seller. Dingo suddenly begins to tremble, a reaction Sung-ho attributes to the beast picking up on the lethal instincts haunting the road ahead. He calls for Dingo as they sprint through the ruined city. Sung-ho narrowly dodges a crackling energy beam while Dingo lunges into the fray, confronting a pack of mutated sheep in the wilderness. Feeling uneasy under an unseen, predatory gaze, he watches as Dingo leaps over jagged debris to strike at the nearest sheep. He wonders if this struggle is the world's hidden truth as the sheep creature prepares to charge. Sung-ho prepares to rest before the battle, though he harbors a cold desire to kill and readies his crossbow to hunt the beast. He fires a projectile at the creature, but immediately regrets failing to secure a clean kill in a single decisive blow. As zombies groan in the nearby shadows, he commands Dingo to drive the remaining enemies toward their designated target point. Zombies swarm the party, snarling as they close in. Rather than slaughtering the horde immediately, he realizes he must gather a larger count to maximize his efficiency. So he readies his weapon for the lure. He signals Mi-kyung while drawing the enemies toward their designated kill zone to trigger the trap. Glancing upward, he confirms she is prepared to chain her blink skill repeatedly to execute the maneuver. She claims she is used to thrill rides, and he charges to carve a path with his energy blade. They utilize their enhanced speed to dash across the ruins, with him pulling her to safety just as she proves her true potential. Regrouping, they spot one straggler, but the gym director continues to impress by manipulating his summoned animals with effortless precision. Though the director is stunned by the display, he rejects an offer of assistance, insisting he wants to enjoy the skirmish on his own. He welcomes the chance to cut loose, but a sudden blade pierces his shoulder, drawing a pained scream as Hyung-jun watches in horror. As Mi-kyung rushes to tend the wound, their attacker dismissively claims his hand simply slipped by accident. Sung-ho recognizes the pair from the camping store, instantly identifying them as the same thugs who previously shot Yoo-hyun with a crossbow. Mi-kyung spits out an insult, but the attacker just mocks Seng-kan's intuition, offering to settle for one target since he already claimed two. Agreeing to leave one for them, he pauses to confront them about their schemes before they have a chance to retreat. He demands to know why they broke the rules to infiltrate his party, and though they pull back on their leader's orders, they vow their next meeting will be far bloodier. Later, the survivors gather to share a meal, with the director bandaged and slowly recovering from his injury. Tension rises as they discuss their defensive habits, Hyung-jun growing frustrated that they continue to take hits instead of striking back. Though he respects Sung-ho's leadership and chooses not to argue, he insists they must never bow to evil, even if they stop short of murder, before they all toast to their survival. Despite the camaraderie, Sung-ho knows these peaceful days are numbered as the orderly apocalypse marches toward its inevitable conclusion, leaving the world to buzz with the unsettling, amplified chirping of insects. A mysterious creature navigates the shadows until a violent rift tears through the air, causing him to stare at the energy surge. Caught between raw shock and hesitation, the beetle presents a haul of minerals, and he is stunned to see his companions already crafted them into gear. He inspects the throwing daggers and leather bags, marveling at the craftsmanship and wondering if these creatures are actually dwarves as he is overwhelmed by the sheer quality of the equipment. Flustered by the unexpected upgrade, he plays with a small knife to tease his tiny helpers, then turns his attention to testing the gear's performance on his training targets. Twirling a glowing blue dagger, he dashes forward and slices through a wooden log with ease to confirm the weapon's lethal sharpness. Next, he prepares a red pepper bomb for its field test, but upon detonation, a strange red energy manifests on the target, leaving him momentarily confused. He initially questions the bomb's firepower, but the red energy suddenly backfires, knocking him backward as he struggles to maintain his path toward becoming a true hero. Lying on the grass, he gives a thumbs up as he realizes the pepper bomb is lethal enough to incapacitate monsters with a keen sense of smell. So he invites the beetles to live with him, knowing their skills are essential for surviving the dangerous forest. Noticing the plummeting temperatures and dwindling food, he offers the beetles sanctuary within his shelter to focus on crafting. They respond with wide-eyed surprise, prompting him to emphasize that this partnership secures survival for both sides. Interpreting their frantic gestures as consent, he seals the pact with a firm touch, finalizing their new arrangement. He ponders the true nature of his strange allies while he and Dingo slip back into reality to patrol the crumbling ruins. Anticipating the goblin's arrival, he soon spots one preying on a civilian, confirming his grim predictions. As he watches the creatures begin construction on their nest, he wonders if these goblins possess the same heightened vitality as the local zombies. Dingo's sudden alert signals that the Goblin Lair event has officially commenced, and Sang-hong notes that the core threat remains as dangerous as ever. Navigating the desolate landscape with growing confidence, the pair tracks the event's epicenter. He discovers a surprisingly narrow portal and worries for the unprepared survivors who lack knowledge of these dungeon mechanics. Stepping through, he compares the layout to familiar game layers while testing his trait to determine if it anchors to this world or the other. The portal deposits him into an otherworldly pocket, confirming that these layers exist in a subterranean layer beneath reality, so he begins scouting for immediate loot. He concludes that these event dungeons function as a separate third space, noting a perception boost and finding a luminous necklace to guide his way. This unique environment allows him to equip any gear without restriction, and with a confident smirk, he readies himself for the challenge. He sprints through the dark passage, noting that because layers are early game events, they lack traps and follow a single, simple path. When goblins notice his light, he uses the dungeon's predictable layout to his advantage, cutting through them with a single strike of his energy blade. He swings his sword in a downward arc, clearing the path before encountering a fork where two more goblins block his way. The blessing restores his stats, and he attacks the goblins, calling the situation a terrible predicament. Ambushed from behind, he flashes a smile and unleashes a powerful blue energy technique that slashes through the attackers. He swings his blade with lethal speed, dispatching the remaining goblins and noting that they have become a piece of cake for him now. Moving through the tunnel, Sang-ho stops abruptly after spotting someone kneeling in the distance. A figure tells him he will learn the truth, while an orc kneels nearby. The giant creature slams a club down, and Sang-ho, surrounded by a fiery aura, prepares to strike back. He punches the monster while dismissing the encounter as disappointing, then strikes it down with his sword. As the creature lies defeated, he recovers his weapon, and the system confirms he has cleared the lair and earned a random reward. A magical quiver appears, and he feels satisfied after his adamantero skill gains increased penetration power. Reflecting on how his experience prevents the trauma of these encounters, he turns toward a swirling portal to check on Hyung-jun's party. He decides to analyze his enemies' movements first, but suddenly halts when he realizes he might not need to search for them at all. Sol-ho smiles confidently, bow in hand as he prepares for his next move. He reflects on his simple, improvised plan, considering the aggressive nature of the hiking suit trio who continue their violent path. Sang-ho strikes the creature, confirming his suspicion that his rivals neglected their defensive positioning to rush their goblin hunt. He tracks them to the cavern, finding the portal exactly where he expected. One man boasts of his extensive combat experience to his peers, who shower him with praise as their newfound boss. 30 minutes later, the group exits the den cursing in frustration before diving into a red portal to continue their scavenging. Kyung-hoon is suddenly confronted by his peers regarding his previous arrogant claim that only cowards remained in the area. One man suggests their rivals might hail from another region, while another vows to make his enemy regret ever being born. A nervous companion warns of a base at a nearby golf course, but is mocked for failing to realize that goblin dens generate in multiple locations. The leader scolds his subordinate for such incompetence, creating a suffocating, tense atmosphere among the gathered group. Watching from the shadows, Sang-ho maintains his focus on his primary objective, hoarding items and levels before hunting a hobgoblin for a new skill. The leader admits they previously ambushed Hyung-jun's party, crushing an object in his hand with a menacing, cruel grin. Contemplating his ability to reshape the situation, the leader decides they must steal the remaining supplies from Hyungjun's group. When a subordinate objects on moral grounds, the leader mocks his weakness, grabbing his shoulder while questioning if their victims still hold any affection for them. He vows to eliminate Sang-ho before the man becomes too dangerous to handle or manage. Observing the group enter the portal, Sang-ho notes that they are far more predatory and dangerous than he initially expected. He decides to nip this threat in the bud indirectly, stepping through the portal to intervene in their plans. A confident smile spreads across his face as he prepares to confront the surge of energy, contemplating his power to observe and copy their skills. A man gasps for breath, his terror mounting as he warns his unseen pursuer to keep their distance. Suddenly, goblins crawl from a red portal, launching a surprise blowgun attack that strikes a young man in the forearm. Sang-ho watches the ambush, questioning how many goblins remain in this tutorial labyrinth before ordering his team to prepare for a charge. He pauses in realization, and when warned against acting rashly, Sang-ho manifests ethereal chains. The energy binds a man in place, Sim-hul's anger flaring at the captive's constant indecision. He confronts the man about his past complaints regarding the passivity of Hyungjun's gym members, mocking his pathetic flip-flopping. A mysterious figure taunts him about being cut loose by Hyungjun, but Som-ho insists he left the group voluntarily. The argument halts when a character points to a limping, injured hobgoblin emerging from the debris of the city. Sang-ho shifts his focus to take down the hobgoblin, arguing that a calculated strike is better than a suicidal charge into the den. A wounded survivor watches in shock as a character's eye glows blue, signaling an imminent awakening while the creature continues its limping approach. Hyunghun's party discusses the monster, noting they must secure the last hit to obtain the skill. Sang-ho channels golden energy into his fist, reassuring Bo-Rad that he will handle the situation so they can survive. He wades through shallow water, furious that the hunt has begun without him, and screams at the others to stop. The group gathers over the object, confused by the sudden chaos of its discovery. The boy stares in shock at the person in the red hoodie, finally snapping that if the abuse continues, he and Bora are leaving for good. They realize they were lured into a trap by a luminous stone necklace planted on the corpse, a revelation that leaves them paralyzed with fear. Sang-ho grits his teeth in frustration, regretting his excessive caution instead of using his trait to bind the enemy the moment they converged. A sudden, panicked cry rings out as a disembodied arm begins floating in midair, plunging the survivors into absolute terror. He readies a sparking, spherical object in his hand, staring in horror as a mysterious creature manifests before him in the gloom. A helmeted figure drops into the darkness, reaching out to intercept the energy orb. This armored stranger identifies the object as a firework just as it hits the ground and begins to emit violent sparks. He warns them to do their best to survive, just as a horde of goblins corners the group in the narrow, suffocating alleyway. One man struggles to run through the dark corridor, desperate to reach the safety of the infirmary while the pack closes in. Suddenly, goblins ambush the group from a ledge above, pinning the man down with a barrage of spears and jagged machetes. Sang-ho eventually discovers the corpses of the hiking suit trio slumped motionless near the cavern entrance. He notes that other survivors managed to escape, deciding to let them go this once because they showed at least a shred of conscience. Turning away from the carnage, he dismisses the current situation and shifts his focus toward checking on Hyungjun and the rest of his allies. He strikes down a goblin with his blade, but the situation remains dire as he realizes the swarm is far more dangerous than anticipated. Mikyoung holds the front line with her sharp combat instincts while Singhol assesses the unfolding chaos. Yu Yun shares intelligence in real time, warning that goblins are encroaching from the front while zombies swarm from the west. Suyeon fires arrows from a nearby rooftop, utilizing her newly unlocked long-range healing to keep the group barely holding on. A sudden surge of magical energy floods Seonhunchul. As he gauges the overwhelming number of foes closing in on their position, he shifts his grip, readying his spear to hold back the tide of goblins before they can breach the group's defenses. When a hidden goblin fires a blowgun from the shadows, he narrowly pivots to dodge the incoming projectile. He forces the monsters into the narrow ruins to bottleneck their charge. A stray strike catches him in the leg, and he winces as his health bar drops, fueling his growing frustration. Cornered by 5 of the creatures, he briefly questions if this is the end until a teammate's voice cuts through the chaos. He blasts the goblins back with a burst of blue energy, swearing that no one will perish tonight under his watch. Radiating an intense light, his eyes glow yellow as he quickly swaps his gear to prepare for the next wave. He shouts to his ally that he is intentionally keeping his health low to trigger a powerful stat-boosting skill. The technique is a complex combo requiring 20 strength, a secret he picked up from an old instructional video. Noting that his bow is finally snapped, he remarks that once a stat hits 30, a player transcends into a superhuman. Satisfied that his companion is secure, he downs a dose of sun apple juice and tosses over a recovery bottle. He commands his ally to hold the front line with Mikyung until midnight while he readies a new weapon. Lunging into the darkness, he promises to return shortly as he vanishes to intercept the enemy forces. He prepares for the next selection phase just as a one-sided massacre of the zombies ensues. He carves through evolved zombies and weaker goblins alike, leaping deep into the fray to clear the streets. None of the monsters can halt his momentum as he executes a sweeping strike, cementing his dominance over the apocalypse. A headless creature looms over the rubble, yet he stands victorious among the shredded undead. Spotting an incoming bone creeper, Senhon readies his gear, intending to lure the skeletal horror toward the barricade to wipe out the surrounding goblins. Everything proceeds exactly as he calculated, with the entity drawing closer while radiating a malevolent purple aura. Suddenly, he freezes in his tracks, hearing desperate pleas for help from a soldier pinned down by a pack of zombies. The pressure mounts as his survival instinct buff begins to fade, forcing him to choose his next move with extreme caution. He forces himself to remain cold, reminding himself that saving this stranger is not the priority when Mikyung's safety hangs in the balance. Dismissing the soldier as a liability, he ignores the desperate cries and continues focusing on the goblin threat alongside his allies. Though the man pleads for aid, Songhyu remains unmoved, prioritizing the tactical advantage of his current position over a reckless rescue. As the monsters clash, the other survivors scramble to cover to avoid getting in his way, proving they possess the grit necessary to endure this apocalypse. Leaping through the air, the archer decapitates the nearest monster before landing to activate a dimensional gate. With his survival instinct buff finally expiring, he prepares to step through the portal and confront the next stage of the gauntlet. The bone creeper loses its target just as he triggers a hidden trap, obliterating the skeletal creature in a brilliant orange flash. Suyan uses her green magic to assist in the cleanup, though the strain of the skill forces her to collapse from exhaustion. She brushes off his concern with a playful smile, insisting he should feel free to utilize her support whenever the situation demands it. Captain Kim Hyun-woo steps forward to offer his gratitude for the intervention. Though Song-ho is struck by how surprisingly young the officer appears, Hyun-woo explains that his promotion was finalized just moments before the world crumbled, leaving him stranded in the middle of the chaos. Son-ho asks where he was stationed, and the soldier reveals his post was at the Kori nuclear power plant. Mikyung points out that walking 40 kilometers through a landscape crawling with monsters is nearly impossible, so she questions how he even reached them alive. He admits the observation is sharp, then reveals he only traveled here because he saw smoke rising from the plant, which signaled the potential crisis. The group realizes the danger of a core meltdown, which Hyun-woo warns must be evacuated from immediately based on a worker's past instructions. Song-ho demands to know what a core meltdown entails, but the soldier insists they set aside questions to focus on the immediate task. The reality of the threat becomes clear as Mikyung finds black dust in her hand, confirming that radiation has already leaked from the reactor. Song-ho confirms that Hyun-woo braved the journey specifically to warn them about the lethal radiation release. The soldier admits he is lucky to be alive, explaining that most people he encountered treated his warnings about a nuclear explosion as a dangerous delusion. Song-ho realizes the man's presence is a liability because the monsters he inadvertently attracted could have triggered a deadly zombie wave. He berates Hyun-woo for his reckless arrival, noting that Yoo-hyun and Mi-kyun had to leave the safety of their base to deal with the fallout. Confronted with the danger he placed upon civilians, the captain kneels and admits that everything is his fault. Song-ho remains cold, stating he prefers certainty, and draws his knife to demand proof of the soldier's desperate claim. Hyun-woo shouts that he can prove his sincerity and stabs his blade into the wall, preparing to show his glowing hand to demonstrate the truth. The soldier screams as steel bites into his palm, yet he catches the incoming blade with his other hand, his unwavering gaze proving his desperate resolve to the group. Though his companions recoil at the sheer recklessness of the display, Seong-ho merely chuckles, admitting he had to verify the soldier's character with his own eyes. Focusing on the path ahead, the group asks for the next move, prompting Sing-hong-ho to decide that leveling Mi-kyung to 10 is the priority to unlock a trait that will enhance their mobility. He grumbles about carrying the entire team on his back as magical paper planes manifest in the air, signaling the start of their logistical preparations. Directing the flow, he orders Hyung-jun and Soo-yeon to secure the supplies while Yoo-hyun and the captain set out to distribute flyers about the nuclear league, aiming to maximize their impact. While the captain remains wary of these unorthodox methods, Song-ho admits that although he dislikes the man's moral crusading, He respects the genuine desire to protect the innocent. Asserting his authority over the route, he proposes they push southwest toward Gimhae, turning their mandatory transit into an opportunity to farm resources along the way. The captain agrees, noting that his surviving comrades likely secured a Type 1 warehouse at the Gimhae battalion, which could prove vital to their progress. Acknowledging the rival group at the golf course blocking their path, Sung-ho finalizes the plan to use the Gangsaeo-gae Villa district as a temporary staging ground before hitting the battalion. With no objections to his strategic pivot toward the coast of Changwon, he orders the group to break camp and move out immediately. Far away, a survivor ponders the secrets of the Soul Dungeon, while in a surreal shift, the protagonist wakes up disoriented and surveys a field of defeated monsters, while hunger gnaws at his stomach. He demands silence from the desolate surroundings, left to contemplate whether he has been reduced to scavenging through trash for scraps in this hostile, shifting reality. Song-ho sighs, lamenting the lack of food drops since the auction house began drawing such heavy crowds. He suddenly turns, calling out to the rats sneaking peeks nearby and demanding they reveal themselves. A mysterious figure approaches, levitating the severed head of their enemy as he kicks a spherical object toward the remains. The stranger introduces himself as Byom-suk, an agent serving under President Jiang. To avoid further misunderstanding, he offers an invitation to join the government shelter, noting that the top survivor has already joined their ranks. Song-ho questions the alliance, confirming that the president is indeed still alive and leading the survivors. Beam-sok explains their goal is to build a group strong enough to withstand monster raids and zombie waves. Dismissing the offer with indifference, he even flicks a projectile at the agent to show his lack of interest. He insists he must look after his brother, Young-jun, and angrily denies the accusations made against him. Beam-sok warns that the dragon heart inside him is consuming his soul, and notes that his current path leads directly to Uijeongbu. After being told they are under orders to bring him in at any cost, he finally agrees to visit the shelter at least once. He reflects on the nature of society as a clique of similar people, promising to take care of everything for the sake of Sokyeonyeon. Song-ho faces an impossible dilemma, feeling as though the entities surrounding him are a glitch in this orderly apocalypse. He resolves to track down the one who betrayed him, driven by a desperate need to uncover the motive behind such a cold and calculated choice. Meanwhile, her life shifts after becoming the Bunny Princess, a persona that allows her to embrace the game-like reality where even bizarre behavior earns her a devoted following. Others find her antics amusing and begin imitating her style, realizing that in this system-integrated world, the eccentric are rarely ignored. She discovers genuine friends among the costume-clad survivors, forming bonds that feel far more real than any connection from her past. An angry blonde man threatens death over a slight delay, though Sang-ho knows that arriving late is simply part of the expected rhythm of their survival. The Bunny Princess realizes that even among her closest allies, friendships maintain a strange, uneven cadence. Some connections click instantly while others feel awkward, as the group struggles to navigate their roles within this tutorial labyrinth. A man addresses him as an old man, admitting he shares no real closeness with Young-in as they trudge through the ruins. They never matched well, yet he accepts this distance as the standard logic governing their survival party. He notes the friendships are merely groups, and within those units, friction and trouble are inevitable consequences of their constant proximity. A figure approaches, suggesting that in-person meetings feel different, and initiates a candid confession during their trek. He admits he only offered recruitment under orders, arguing the government shelter needs stricter screening. He remains open about his disagreement with the others, a blunt honesty that earns him a begrudging respect. They reach their destination, which is not the shelter itself, but a designated meeting point for his teammate. Yoon-jung appears, introducing herself as a level 12 Blink Awakener who specializes in transporting members across the map. She explains her traits, contact displacement, and long-range blink, confirming that their current location remains hidden from all but a select few. She questions why he is revealing his secrets so freely, and he explains that he requires physical contact to move her, hoping to avoid any misunderstanding of his motives. The tension finally dissolves as she realizes the situation is far less serious than she initially feared. Yoon-jung offers her arm, insisting that physical contact is necessary for the transport, and brushes off his safety concerns by noting her own status makes her effectively invulnerable. Stepping forward to greet the group, Won-tak formally introduces himself to the new arrival, Rabbit Gongju. He gestures toward the boy standing beside him, Gyang-in, who identifies himself as Survivor 1 and notes his trait as intrinsically linked to the mechanics of the shelter. Recognizing Sang-ho immediately despite his disheveled appearance, Gyangin reminisces about their past times together, though Song-ho remains visibly skeptical of their supposed closeness. When Gyangin insists on the depth of their veteran bond, Song-ho expresses visceral disgust at the insincerity and bluntly calls him a fake to his face. Tension spikes as Sang-ho prepares to walk away, triggering his absolute will skill repeatedly while Gyangin tauntingly dares him to start a fight. Grinning with a menacing edge, Sang-ho accepts the challenge and proposes a high-stakes bet to raise the intensity of their confrontation. Won-tak attempts to stabilize the volatile meeting, gesturing for Rabbit Ganju to take a seat so they can finally exchange names. So-kyeon reveals his identity and his infinite resurrection trait, though his attempt at humor about being a 17-year-old boy falls flat in the cold, professional atmosphere. Cutting through the banter, Sung-ho demands the true reason for his recruitment, forcing Won-tak to admit it was indeed a calculated move to persuade him. Won-tak explains his goal of keeping Korea alive, but concedes that after this face-to-face meeting, he realizes it is the wrong time to force the issue, so he decides to let Sin-ho leave. Song-ho mocks the president's judgment, prompting Won-tak to offer an escort to ensure he can depart immediately as promised. Determined to find the culprit behind the current crisis, Song-ho accepts as Won-tak orders Yoon-jong to accompany him until he chooses to part ways, a command she eagerly agrees to follow. A government official interrupts to suggest checking the auction house, as an official notice concerning the South is about to be posted. Acting on this advice, Young-jun's group finishes their preparations before dawn and successfully travels toward the Villa district. Song-ho finds them farming stockpiled supplies, though he reflects that reality is riddled with dangerous variables absent from the game. He suddenly wonders if a nuclear disaster has already occurred elsewhere, staring intently at the burning facility. Reports surface confirming zombies have appeared at Ganshan port, forcing the government to scramble for emergency meetings with USFK. Pushing aside his distress, Sung-ho focuses on two goals: moving the group to safety and bracing for upcoming events. He looks on stoically, reminding his companion that there is no way to reverse the transmigration that turned their reality into a game. Elsewhere, a mysterious figure watches from the ruins while monsters shriek in the dark, necessitating thorough scouting and a swift response. At the apartment block, Sang-ho herds zombies into one place for testing, while shadowy entities discuss the origins of the gates and paths. He engages the evolved zombies without using key items to gauge their agility and durability, measuring exactly how much force is required to bring them down. He tests his own strength against the monsters, determined to gauge exactly how much force is required to drop them without relying on his inventory. There is a third, more crucial motive for this massacre. After a monster shrieks and lunges, he realizes that clearing the area is a tactical necessity. Wiping out the zombies now prevents their respawn at midnight, ensuring that only weaker goblins remain nearby. He slashes through a monster with his blade, clearing the path to make survival more favorable for his allies. This preparation is vital so that Young-jun's group will almost never be in real danger as they navigate the ruins. Striking down another foe with absolute focus, he ensures the safety of those relying on him. With the first response complete, he turns his attention towards scouting the survivors in the studio block. Time is short, and he knows that in this game-like reality, the one with the least to lose is the strongest. As the sun sets, he contacts Yoo-hyun, instructing him to bring everyone to the pre-arranged meeting spot. Yoo-hyun is stunned by the abundance of supplies provided, though Sehong-ho modestly dismisses his foresight as mere luck. He explains that Captain Kim is currently scouting the Type 01 warehouse in Gimhae, driven by a prideful need to ensure the location is safe before moving the group. Adding that Mikyun accompanied Soo-yeon to Eden Villa. He asks why they were warned to avoid Bia District C. Song-ho reveals he fought a killer there, warning them that the golf course party leader possesses a dangerous mind control trait, which is why they settled in District B instead. He warns that those thugs are not just bullies, but a coordinated threat that uses sheer numbers to force others into submission, making the district a death trap for any small group. Yoo-hyun nods in agreement, though he shifts uncomfortably as he admits to acquiring two new traits that, at first glance, appear rather pathetic and weak. To demonstrate, he gestures toward his creations, explaining that his doll bomb only detonates upon his command, a trigger he has thankfully managed to internalize so he can activate it silently during combat. His second ability, the Smile Communication Doll, allows for seamless telepathic-like coordination between anyone holding a marked stone, a vital tool for maintaining fluid movement in such a hostile environment. Song-ho watches him closely, realizing these tools are actually far more potent than his companion suspects, offering the precise tactical edge needed to streamline their entire survival strategy. He suggests that attaching these doll bombs to arrows would drastically increase their firepower while layering on debilitating status effects, while the communication dolls will ensure the team stays perfectly synchronized. To prove the value of tactical synergy, he activates his absolute will, instantly nullifying any potential status abnormalities, demonstrating how even minor abilities can shift the power balance when utilized correctly. Yoo-hyun finally grasps the true potential of his craft, and, with newfound confidence, enthusiastically accepts the responsibility of handling all scouting duties for the party. Satisfied that his support team is prepared, Sang-hong-ha turns his focus back to his own progression, firmly committing himself to mastering the path of the swordsman. Meanwhile, in the Susong-gu district of Daegu, a woman in a red dress rests on a litter, watching her subordinates herd zombies and listening to them openly mock her peculiar obsession with the undead, as the survivors bicker over dwindling food supplies. Her irritation boils over, and she snaps at her team, her temper fraying under the relentless pressure of managing their chaotic surroundings. She pulls out the auction house interface to vent her mounting frustration, seething with anger that the user Kimbelover has failed to reach out to her as promised. Frustrated by the silence, she directs her group toward the southwest, convinced her target is hiding in either Gimhae or Changwon. High above, a sniper tracks the group carrying her litter, his finger steadying on the trigger as he prepares for the approach. She weighs their options, ultimately concluding that moving inland offers a far safer trajectory than their current coastal path. Suddenly, a monster lunges from the debris, but she remains unbothered, merely grumbling that the children need more discipline while she is trying to focus. Rising from her seat, she snaps her fingers to summon her personal retinue, the Dead Boys. 5 purple-skinned zombies strike a pose at her command, and she directs Geocrown to hunt down the nearby targets. Geocrown leaps toward the building, seizing the men by their collars and dragging them down into the dirt as they scream in terror. When one man warns of the coming bloodbath, she decides to spare them, declaring she has no intention of becoming a common killer, which earns her their desperate gratitude. However, she refuses to let the incident pass entirely, demanding they pay her back for their attempted ambush with a sly, predatory smile. The Dead Boys loom over the cowering men, forcing the survivors to their knees. Miles away, Dingo trots through a field while Sang-ho marvels at the incredible progress his allies have achieved. Examining a mithril hook worth 3,000 points, he wonders if he can restore the spirit of a failed awakened, telling his team that their garden management and animal husbandry make them SS-tier workers. He offers a thumbs up to his beetle companion, noting that while the location is dangerously dark, these rare items are essential for survival even in the real world. The small creature suddenly chirps with a newfound awareness, leaving him momentarily bewildered by the display. When he asks if it knows of a hidden spot, the beetle points directly to specific coordinates marked on the map. He admits he has never visited the area due to his packed schedule, finding it suspicious that even the well-informed information brokers know nothing about it. Concluding that the location was likely never scouted, he decides it is better to investigate now than to regret missing a potential opportunity. Though exhausted from his recent labor, he shakes off the fatigue, and he and Dingo begin a full investigation of the surrounding forest. They navigate through a thick, misty grove, finding the movement manageable since it is still broad daylight. He spots several strange plants along the path but ignores them, knowing they are useless because no system window appears upon inspection. Success strikes when they find a tree heavy with shadow grapes, a jackpot find that will keep his night vision supplied for months. As he considers calling the beetle crew for help, he notices something unusual and fears a pack of fang wolves is closing in. A clawed foot slamming into the forest floor confirms they have entered werewolf territory, explaining the lack of smaller animals. Forcing himself to stay calm, he prepares to remove his watch to bail out to reality if necessary, recalling that he remains a special case within the system. Dingo trembles as the beast approaches, but he notes the creature has lost its reason and voice, giving them a clear opening to stick to the plan. He dashes through the forest alongside Dingo, drawing the werewolf's ire because its primal rage makes it the perfect target for baiting attacks. Sang-ho mocks the creature with a taunting gesture, inciting the beast to grind its teeth in a display of predatory fury. The werewolf lets out a deafening roar, triggering a fierce combat encounter where he dodges lunging packs and counters with bursts of blue energy. After the clash, he pauses to let Dingo rest, knowing that even with the pack encroaching on their position, he must prioritize his companion's safety. He relies on the werewolf's volatile temper to draw aggro within the tutorial labyrinth, using the monster's aggression to manipulate the flow of the battle. Killing a werewolf is normally a grueling task, but he exploits the dimensional marsh terrain to strike a precise, glowing blow into the beast's chest. The wounded creature howls in pain, but the dimensional marsh remains the only factor preventing him from being overwhelmed by its ferocious counterattacks. It lunges again, warning that its special abilities are limited to 2 uses, as he strikes it once more to push his advantage. He notes that the creature has not changed at all, though he readies his spear, bracing for a sudden development that catches him by surprise. The system alerts him to the activation of Wolf Sense, which forces the creature into a pained howling transformation as its stats surge. He activates Wolf Senses and watches the enemy dodge his spear, realizing the skill is a serious threat. The werewolf maneuvers with ease, but he realizes that while the beast's perception is boosted, he must look beyond its evasion tactics. Despite the werewolf's insane health regeneration that mends its wounds in seconds, he remains composed because he knows the limits of his opponent. He activates his second slot, confident that he is successfully wearing down the monster's stamina despite its rapid self-healing. Pulling out a specialized projectile, he knows the key to countering the werewolf's enhanced senses is already in his hands as he strikes the ground. The werewolf's eyes flare with a predatory red light as it lets out a bone-chilling howl, prompting Song-ho to realize that the beast has effectively neutralized his agility and perception buffs. He retreats behind a barrier to analyze the beast's movements and survive the encounter. With his plan set, he lunges forward, locking the monster in a ferocious exchange of steel against claw. The wolf unleashes green energy, and Song-ho leaps away to dodge its claw. Just as he evades the strike, a sudden flash of light blinds the clearing while the beast lunges again, narrowly missing his retreating form. He readies his twin blades to clash repeatedly with the monster, red energy surging around his leg to maintain his momentum as he parries a heavy strike and lands a precise slash against its hide. Struggling against the creature's immense strength, he delivers a hard kick to create distance, desperate to break the stalemate. As the werewolf stumbles, he dashes forward, noting that despite the shifting variables, the battle is proceeding exactly according to his calculations. He throws a magical projectile toward the beast, before swinging a corded weapon to anchor himself to a high branch, needing the high ground to secure a tactical advantage. A roar echoes through the trees as the monster recovers instantly, entering a berserk state and activating its own combat instinct skill to match his prowess. He struggles to climb the trunk as the cornered beast lunges, its dark aura overwhelming the forest before it lands back on the ground with a heavy, threatening thud. Clinging to the tree, Song-ho sighs at the persistent threat posed by the beast below. He watches the wolf from his perch, surprised by his system interface, and begins to plan. Deciding it is time to pay back the monster in kind, he activates his own combat instinct as the wolf crouches to spring. The creature lunges, testing his ability to evade, but he remains calm as he prepares for the collision. Calculating the gap at exactly 4 meters, he waits for the wolf to snap toward his position. He raises his handgun and fires directly at the leaping beast, sealing its fate in an instant. Gunshots ring out, silencing the wolf's roar as it crashes to the forest floor, defeated. A system notification confirms he has reached level 17, granting him the combat instinct skill he has long desired. This skill provides a 20% boost to health, strength, and agility for 3 minutes, though he notes it requires a genuine intent to kill to function. He prepares for the upcoming Taster Dungeon event. Keeping the promise he made to the mysterious blonde man at the forefront of his mind, he surveys the city and wonders, how can they keep this up for days? Mi-kyung startles Yu-hyun, who complains about her sudden approach while begrudgingly accepting the food she offers. They discuss the dire situation in Via District C, noting that the thugs have begun moving their supplies as if preparing to relocate. These thugs have turned to rampant looting, stealing essential goods from the new settlers arriving in the area. They are now forcing survivors to kill one another in exchange for food, justifying their cruelty by claiming the act does not make them murderers. Mi-kyung questions why Song-ho asked them to monitor such monsters, challenging Yu-hyun to admit he already knows the real reason. She remains uncertain, so he warns her to listen closely to his reasoning. He explains that while others label him a sociopath, he prefers to view himself as an anti-hero operating in a broken world. His actions are justified by his own moral code, as he systematically executes those he deems true villains. She is disturbed by the silence of his heartbeat, but he points to the unexplained disappearance of their attackers to prove he is not the one behind their demise. After a heavy silence, he tells her that if looking away is easier, she should, but he has chosen a harder path to ensure more people survive. Turning to Yu-hyun, he asks him to confirm that Kwon Kyung-jun remains inside his fortress, unless an emergency forces him out. Yoyan explains the hideout is an impregnable structure, reinforced with heavy plastic and wood, designed to withstand any breach. He notes that standard tools are useless against the reinforced plastic, and the bulletproof glass makes the windows just as impenetrable. When Yuhyun warns that the leader's men would respond too quickly for a direct assault, he pauses, struck by a sudden realization. He demands to know why Yuhyun gathered such detailed intel if not for a planned raid, though Yuhyun claims it was just necessary for their transit to Gimhe, admitting the scouting was actually fun. Yuhyun's casual tone sparks a sense of mutual understanding that strengthens the bond between them. After praising Yuhyun for exceeding expectations, he orders him to rest because he has unfinished business to settle with his enemies. Under the cover of night, he watches the guards outside the hideout and realizes they still retain a flicker of their former selves despite the mind control. He thinks it doesn't matter if his guess is wrong, so he consumes the orb. Swallowing a shade grape, he gains the night vision needed to navigate the darkness and arrives at the villa fully prepared for his infiltration. He draws his glowing daggers and launches precise projectiles at the guards, incapacitating them instantly to clear his path without sounding a general alarm. After capturing the two collapsed men, he notes that he is doing them a favor by removing them from the board before turning his focus toward breaching the fortress. Although Yuhyun described the building as an impregnable structure, Sung-ho manifests blue energy, confident that tearing through the exterior is a simple task. He is greeted by the small beetle-like creatures at the portal and smiles at the prospect of the coming chaos, asking if this is their first excursion into the real world. A negotiation follows where he promises them 10 pieces of sweet potato jelly to punch a hole through the door and sends them ahead to scout the interior. Watching from the shadows, he observes the insectoid creatures crawling up the wall to create an opening, promising them their reward once his work is finished. To breach the defenses, he prepares plastic fire cans explosives, far more potent than standard Molotovs, and readies them to be dropped through the newly created hole. He steps through the portal and waits for the explosion to start his raid. Stepping back into the room, he finds two survivors frantically trying to extinguish the flames, and noting that neither is Kwon Kyung-jun, he moves to neutralize them. He strikes both women from behind, leaving them to collapse on the floor as he strides through the doorway, declaring the encounter over. He scans the smoke-filled room, his gaze locked on the shadows where Kwon Kyung-jun is surely hiding. When his demands for the man to show himself go unanswered, he activates lifeform tracking to pinpoint his exact location. The system highlights the target, and Sang Hong Hao's eyes flare with cold intensity as he begins the hunt. He channels red energy into his core, and the system suddenly grants him the SS rank Master of Magic trait, drastically reducing his MP cost while doubling his casting speed. Mocking the coward's silence, he watches as the man finally stumbles out in terror, recognizing him as the same person he faced in the bathroom. Kwon Kyung-jun screams in fury and launches a projectile, but Son-ho intentionally stands his ground, letting the energy blast slam into his shoulder. While his opponent gloats over the successful hit, Son-ho merely brushes off the pain, dismissing the blast as a mere needle prick before questioning the man's pathetic bravado. His bloodlust surges beyond control, forcing the system to trigger his combat instinct skill. He lunges forward with a dagger, informing his trembling opponent that he is an expert at inflicting agony, yet thanking him for serving as the catalyst for his new trait. Descending from above, he connects with a heavy punch to Kyung-jun's stomach, sending the man reeling backward in sheer desperation. He grabs the man's leg to prevent escape and slams him into the floor. Observing the wreckage, he notes that there are ways for survivors to kill without system penalties, while Kyung-jun lies beneath him, coughing up blood. He pulls out a knife, forcing a grim choice between a self-inflicted death to preserve some dignity or begging for a mercy that will never come. Kyung-jun sneers through his pain, warning that other predators have already established powerful clans across the country, even in the safe zones of Gimhae and Changwon. The man grins through his blood, but Sein-ho breaks his defenses and declares, pathetic. He declares that Kyung-jun will be his first true kill, prompting a defiant refusal from the dying man, who swears he will never surrender his points. The system confirms he has acquired Fireball LV.1, and as the man screams that his pride is his final possession, Sung-ho calmly sets the blade aside. Sung-ho watches the dying man curse his fate, knife in hand, until the finality of their encounter leaves nothing but silence. With the leader finally dead, he reflects on the power vacuum left in the wake of the Sea Party's demise. He drags the two unconscious women away to the beetle-infested corner, tucking them out of sight while he secures the site. They remain slumped on the cracked concrete, completely incapacitated and unaware of the shift in power. He searches the woods with Dingo to locate the supplies the Sea Party hid. Inside the cache, he uncovers the leader's private journal, finally pulling back the curtain on his darkest secrets. The pages reveal how the man maintained control by auctioning stolen items and sending coded messages to coordinate with regional clans, confirming the game-like nature of their survival. At daybreak, he returns to the hideout to check on the brainwashed underlings, only to discover their memories of the past few weeks have completely vanished. The survivors awaken in a daze, disoriented and confused, leaving him uncertain if this sudden amnesia is a mercy or a future complication. Considering the 11 survivors left behind, he realizes they could become manageable neighbors if they retain their sanity, leading to a tentative agreement to coexist. However, he knows that if the group turns aggressive, they will inevitably become bandits, so he and Dingo retreat to observe them from the shadows. He remains vigilant, hoping no new spark of conflict ignites within the villa complex as he continues his silent watch. Elsewhere, a traveler exhausted by the treacherous terrain questions why their blink trait has failed to carry them further along their intended path. Zhongpao's companion scoffs at his heavy sighing, leaving him to wonder if she is actually attempting to comfort him or merely mocking his fatigue. She blames him for their current predicament, leaving the confused man to search his memory for exactly what he did wrong. As September sets in, Zhongpao grows increasingly frustrated, noting that they should have already reached Muju County if they had only kept to their original schedule. Zhongpao hesitates to visit his friend, but his companion scoffs, noting that a dull trek defeats the entire purpose of their travel. He sighs in frustration, lamenting his perceived weakness and the suffocating tedium of being trapped within this rigid system. She teases him about their recent success in clearing goblin nests and punishing low-life scumbags, forcing him to admit their journey hasn't been entirely devoid of excitement. Promising fresh intel on Sarah, she taps into the auction house interface to broadcast the details of the next major event. The pair reviews the upcoming tutorial labyrinth, a speedrun challenge requiring players to sprint toward the center for exclusive rewards and ranking adjustments. He mentions that the shop will begin selling bread and upgrade to a Tier 2 system once the Cobalt event concludes, a revelation that leaves her visibly surprised. Though he claims he was never truly angry, she catches the lingering dangerous intensity in his gaze and questions his calm facade. She bows suddenly in gratitude, leaving him bewildered as she wonders aloud why a mere guide would take such genuine care of her. Reflecting on his past advice regarding skill combinations and substats like accuracy, she marvels at how surreal it feels to converse so casually with a veteran. Their brief moment of camaraderie is cut short as they arrive in Sejong City, where a man in a pink cape approaches, claiming he has been dying to meet them. The stranger seems shocked by their lack of recognition, eventually identifying himself as Strawberry Princess after being pressed for his identity. After mocking the tiny size of a nearby object, he flicks a pebble to display his power and explains that he has come to propose a formal alliance. A woman smiles and reaches out, insisting that they are destined to rule Sejong together. Song-ho firmly refuses the absurd proposal, stating he would much rather spend his time hanging out with his own friends. His interlocutor mocks his lack of ambition, but ultimately concludes that he is simply playing the fool to hide his true nature. A wave of dizziness hits Sung-ho just as a flamboyant man in a cape interrupts, demanding he retract an insult regarding his wizard-like haircut. Smiling manically, he declares that he operates on an entirely different level than a mere madman. He offers a quick apology to Zhongpao, needing to prove his point, while his confused companion wonders why he insists on acting like a lunatic. Telling them not to worry because he never loses, he begins to lower his pants right there in the middle of the ruins. Suddenly, a muscular man lunges into the fray, announcing a game of cops and robbers where he serves as the law. He threatens to beat them within an inch of their lives if they are caught, then drops into a combat stance to make his intentions clear. The attacker counts down to 3 and punches the pink-haired character in the face. As the combatant follows up with a powerful kick, Song-ho wonders if he is genuinely cursed to face a new disaster every single day. A woman arrives at the ruins just as Song-ho feels a mounting anxiety about whether he will ever successfully reach Changwon. Elsewhere, a man introduces himself and begins outlining the rules for the upcoming tutorial labyrinth speedrun event. Frustrated by the lack of viewers, he considers ending the stream after his 10th failed take. The blonde man turns to depart, but a sudden chime interrupts the silence as Bolsaman donates 4,000 points, asking if he has already missed the start of the broadcast. Song-ho erupts with excitement, relieved he didn't cut the feed early since this viewer remains his only consistent companion, the one source of joy in his isolated life. Though his fan offers to promote the channel on public forums to attract more viewers, Song-ho pleads with him to reconsider, fearing the sudden pressure might drive his only supporter away. They pivot the conversation toward the speedrun title, though Song-ho admits he cannot demonstrate the technique live because the event is time-limited. opting instead to perform the run on an alt account. Activating his speedrun skill, he explains that unlike the static goblin nest, this mode forces multiple players into a single labyrinth simultaneously. To participate, one simply enters a randomly spawning resource gate during September, a mechanic of the orderly apocalypse he describes with practiced confidence. While players can encounter others during the run, he notes that direct meetings are rare since the system scatters everyone to different starting points. Clearing the run requires traversing 3 distinct monster zones to reach the innermost chamber, which serves as the core of the tutorial labyrinth. The system rewards all participants based on their final finish time, with faster records unlocking superior prizes. He warns that the dungeon is pitch black, yet reassures Bolsaman that this early game event features reduced monster stats and dampened tracking capabilities. To bolster his viewers' confidence, he promises to provide luxurious transport, prompting Bolsaman to confirm he has already meticulously recorded these strategies in his notebook. A sudden pang of conscience strikes Song-ho, reminding him that he must take responsibility for his past choices as he continues to guide his only friend. After learning that Bolsaman resides in a remote area without easy VR access, he vows to protect and support him should he ever enter the Survival Life system. Later, Song-ho finds healing in re-watching his old stream VODs, grateful that his fan helped him retain the crucial speedrun knowledge he needs to survive. He monitors the auction house while online users bicker over his expertise, wondering if a stealth patch has adjusted the difficulty since the upgrade materials stopped respawning. Song-ho scoffs at the idea of joining the event, noting his specific traits do not match the requirements, while others bicker over phantom mechanics that do not exist. He observes the public's ignorance, watching them treat him like a social pariah from the supposed safety of their anonymity. A new system notification chimes, but he remains unfazed, offering only a dark smirk at the persistent hostility directed his way. Navigating an alleyway in September, he notes that his previous work clearing Villa District B has left the area eerily quiet. 10 minutes later, he discovers a dimensional gate pulsating with energy. The heavy, threatening presence suggests a powerful entity, but he notes with relief that his luck is holding. He charges into the corridor of death, feeling the familiar intense energy of the tutorial labyrinth as he begins his planned route. He activates his eyes to confirm the zombies are positioned just like in the game. He realizes these mutated monsters have a suppressed ability to track living organisms, meaning they cannot smell him unless he makes direct contact. Stealth becomes his priority, so he resolves to eliminate only the specific zombies that block his path to stay undetected. By repeating this simple process, he plans to carve a path through the maze layout until he reaches the Great Hall at the end of the corridor. As he encounters other groups and memories of past play sessions, he realizes that he is no longer the same person he was back then. He checks his equipment and activates his traits, ready to dominate the challenge ahead. He swings his blade to lure the zombies, waiting for an opening to strike while they crowd his bait. He then prepares to eliminate the noisy threats, levitating briefly as he channels his energy to clear the path forward. With a swift, clean strike, he cuts through the crowd and leaps into a portal, leaving the confused zombies behind. He dodges the energy blast, steadies himself, and readies for what comes next. Seeing distant campfires flickering in the gloom, he realizes he has reached the goblin-infested wilds where he must prioritize speed over strategy. He lunges forward, closing in on the goblins huddled around a fire, and kicks a heavy log into them to disrupt their formation. A smirk plays on his lips, knowing that sabotaging their fire strips the pursuers of their will to chase him through the dark. These dying campfires act as guideposts, leading him safely toward the goblin cavern and the dimensional gate that marks the path to the next area. Suddenly, a sharp warning for him to stay away rings out, leaving him confused as he encounters others hidden in the dark. He stops in his tracks, surprised to find 2 women fighting off goblins, and notices something critical about their struggle. He notices they speak fluent Korean while fighting off the goblin swarm. Watching the woman wave her torch to pull aggro while keeping her back to the wall, he identifies her as a clueless newbie. Though he usually ignores others because rewards depend on his clear time, he hesitates, realizing he is headed in their direction anyway. A red portal tears through the dark, and Song-ho spots a golden goblin hiding in the horde. The Goblin King watches from the shadows, and Song-ho realizes this encounter might finally reveal truths he has long sought. He readies a skill in his first slot, gripping his energy blade as the opportunity to clear the event becomes too good to pass up. Dashing forward, he drives his blade into the king's back, forcing the creature to shriek in sudden, agonizing pain. He instructs the struggling women to ignore their questions and focus on the fight, systematically cutting down the remaining goblins. Weaving through the fray, he uses a circular sword technique to slash through the monsters before sighing in the quiet aftermath. The two strangers stand frozen in fear as he steps in, explaining that he only intervened because he saw them struggling to survive. They thank him for the rescue, and he admits he often worries about how his interference might be perceived by others. He reaches out asking for a moment to talk, leaving them to wonder if this is the truth he mentioned earlier. Sitting by a campfire, he learns they stumbled into the nest by accident, unaware they had triggered a speedrun event. The two survivors reveal their identities, explaining how they ended up in the labyrinth. He introduces himself as a snack bar owner from Busan, prompting the blonde survivor to recall her own memories of Korean snack bars. They realize with shock that the system is auto-translating their languages, making their speech sound perfectly native to one another. Song-ho grows contemplative, realizing the system's reach is far broader than he ever imagined. He recalls the Russian trawler incident where he tested whether normal people could survive exposure to zombie spores. He realizes that something world-encompassing and dangerous is wrapped around the planet like a cosmic rift, an anomaly that defies simple explanation. Deep in thought, he remains lost in the mystery until a companion calls his name, jarring him back to the present. Apologizing for his distraction, he explains his strategy to the survivors, expressing regret that the event forced them into different zones. He hands them shade grapes to aid their night vision as a thank you for the valuable information they shared, offering a warm smile before parting ways. Venturing into the silent forest, he navigates the treacherous swamps and thickets while fending off kobolds with glowing red eyes. The terrain is notoriously difficult, but by utilizing his sun apples, shade grapes, and terrain detection level 2, he bypasses the obstacles with ease. With soundless movement and precise strikes, he clears the entire forest in just 5 minutes, carving through the monsters with his blue energy blades. He reaches the innermost chamber of the labyrinth, scanning the bright rune for the ancient tome, only to find the space remains unchanged. Finding the book missing, he approaches the altar to interact with it, watching as the pages of the mysterious volume begin to flip rapidly on their own. The system identifies the location as Kaya, and he realizes he has shattered the record for the fastest clear time by finishing the run in 38 minutes. Prompted to enter his name on the ranking board, he avoids his usual handle, selecting a new moniker before touching the interface to finalize his entry. He notices the reward chest is surprisingly ornate, and upon prying it open, he discovers a pair of leather shoes that grant health, agility, and the light steps skill. Examining the winged footwear, he realizes the stamina-reducing effect perfectly complements his current needs for efficient traversal. His attention then shifts to a scroll containing the Eye of Truth, a search skill that reveals a target's ID, a jarring discovery that contradicts the developer's original obsession with anonymity. He wonders if this shift is a twisted joke, as the system now mandates a mechanic that effectively dismantles the very secrecy the creators once guarded. With this newfound power, he realizes he can finally unmask the anonymous users haunting the auction house, turning their future interactions into a far more entertaining game.